6:34, why don't we call the meeting to order? Thanks, everybody, for coming here. Why don't we start off, as we normally do, with public input? Anybody? Bruins scores? Nothing?
They lost.
Tatum's back?
They
No?
won.
They did. Both are true. Okay, why don't we keep moving then? So why don't we go to the student report? Ms. Verma, why don't you take us away? Did I pronounce that right, or did I butcher that?
Verma, yeah, correct.
Okay.
So, for notable academic matters, junior course selections were due last Friday. Sophomores recently had a meeting for their course selections, and the Civic Action Project for seniors recently started as well. And seniors' updated GPAs just got sent to colleges and students, so like their mid-year reports.
Mhm.
And for fine arts matters, Maskers won first round of competitions. Notorious won 1 quarterfinals of ICHSA. Also, there will be a 1-act performance this Thursday starting at 7 p.m. at the high school in the PAC. And NRHS will host 1-act semifinals this Saturday. And lastly, Notorious also has semifinals for the ICHSA this Sunday in Connecticut. And for athletic matters, boys hockey ended in Elite 8, girls basketball ended in Elite 8, boys basketball ended in round of 32, gymnastics and track had states, and the spring sports season begins March 16th. And lastly, for other matters, the National Student Council Conference, also known as LEAD, took place February 26th to March 1st, which was in DC. And the MASC State Student Council Conference, which took place in Hyannis, Cape Cod, just happened March 4th to 6th. The DECA States competition at Seaport is this week, Thursday to Saturday. The class of 2029 is hosting a spike ball tournament tomorrow after school. Senior package deadlines has just passed, but prom tickets are still on sale. And junior class is still selling prom tickets until this Friday, and date confirmed for the prom is April 3rd. And for student work report, I recently completed for AP Psychology. We're currently on the unit for personalities, and we were reviewing different psychologists that did different theories, and we were assigned different groups. So for mine, I focused on the trait perspective by Gordon Alport, which
What was the
basically-
perspective, sorry?
Trait perspective.
Okay, yep.
So basically, he emphasizes that each person has like multiple unique traits that make them up, instead of like universal traits that make all of us like equal, or like the same traits we carry. So this is just like the title slide, a little more about him. He graduated from Harvard and he worked with a bunch of other psychologists. More a little about the trait perspective, that personality is more of like consistent and unique traits. And the theory is classified into 3 different categories. You see the different tools that are used, like self-assessment tests, true or false questions, to sort of understand more about like your personality. And we applied it to like a famous person to see like how it works out in like real life, and we used Mother Teresa to further like talk about it. And we showed like little videos in class about it, and yeah, that's why we're excited. And that's all I have.
That's awesome. Anybody wanna? Anything?
I have a question unrelated. Although that project is nice, but this might be more for Dr. Daly. Could we just get an update on the Costa Rica saga? Last time we met, everybody was still trying to get home. Just wanted to know what the epic conclusion of that was.
Oh yeah, my sister was on that trip. They did. I think they ended up coming back, I want to say Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
They were able to get a flight back. So yeah, that ended up working out. They had they ended up flying to North Carolina, and I think they stayed there for like a day. They booked another hotel. They went out like to the mall and did like a few tours, and they were able to.
They made the
fly
best
back.
of it.
Yeah, they were able to fly back the next day. So
I saw so many wonderful notes thanking all of the chaperones
Yeah.
that made it work. So sincere thanks. I mean, that was a lot and unanticipated to try to get back during a blizzard.
I know.
So I'm glad they could make Charlotte as exciting as they could have, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm sure all the parents were really nervous, so to see all the notes about the chaperones was nice, made you feel comforted.
Yeah, it was my understanding they were communicating through WhatsApp with all parents, and that was what I was trying to ascertain first is, was everyone kind of informed? It seemed like they were. It's not great information sometimes to share when it's, the news is that there's no flights right now, and we're trying to work on it. My understanding is through a lot of work with EF, the tour company, and the Chaperones Advocacy, they were able to get a different flight that, I don't know, what I was told was they were given a bigger plane to get people out of there, and they, 2:30 on Thursday. At one point, they were hearing it might be as late as Saturday. I mean, these are the things that raise alarms, but they were able to get back, so that was great. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thank you to the chaperones and to everybody that made that work, 'cause that's a lot to have to deal with.
And thanks to snow, they didn't miss any school, right?
This is true because of the snow days, yeah.
The school was canceled. I do think, and it's obviously, I know it's in all the fine print and it's something that is known, but it is something that came up in my communications with parents. Now, if my daughters were stuck somewhere, I'd be probably reaching out to anybody and everybody, but that it is not a school trip.
Yeah.
It's an independent trip. And of course, it's advertised at the school, but it's not hosted by the school or sponsored by the school. It's really an independent trip. And of course, it has students in it, but that's something that I think maybe gets forgotten. And
Yeah.
I would probably be the first person to forget it if I was worried about when my kids were going to get.
Yeah, and obviously there are kids and there are chaperones. We want to make sure they're safe, but as far as the liability, as far as actually investing in, there was discussion around, should we get a bus, should we this, but it's really EF, the travel company, needs to make those arrangements. And, it was tricky. New York was shut down, all the tunnels were shut down, like you weren't going to get very far, and so waiting was the only real safe solution, but they ultimately got there, so.
And they actually did pretty well. I mean, there were people that were stuck up until
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, even the next week. So I think they actually, EF got them out of there pretty quick compared to, for such a big group.
Yeah, we do the school committee approval of the trip, but what you're really approving is the ability to advertise, because we believe in travel and we want to support it and we want to have those pieces. We have a club in the school, but the actual trip and all the costs and all the liability is private. Yeah.
And were the costs covered of any additional, like the additional night, things like that, or is there insurance that covers that?
I
Or?
believe so, yeah. Yep.
So getting back to you, class of 2026, any
Yeah.
college or next step announcements you might want
I'm
to make?
still waiting to hear back from a lot of regular decision colleges, but those should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully I can
No,
make
we
a
won't
decision
jinx.
soon.
We won't jinx. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, excellent. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman,
Yeah.
could you share about the student council? Would you share with me just the experience, because they approved that trip too?
The state one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the state student council, which was held in Cape Cod, it was me and 15 other student council members. We got there Wednesday. We had little general sessions and we did workshops just to ways that we can make our own student council better, developing skills there and then bringing it back to our council. And then Thursday we had more workshops. We had a banquet at night, and then Friday we had the last closing ceremony. And for me, it was my last student council conference ever, so it was a little bit of a sad moment, but also grateful that I was able to experience it. And we had a lot of freshmen this year go on the trip as well, and they too had an amazing time. It's just a great bonding trip with your council and meeting other council members from across the state, and it was just a really nice trip to have. Yeah.
Any takeaways of how to improve things?
For not really. I
No,
would
that's
say,
okay. I'm not trying to put you in
No,
on
no
the
worries.
spot.
Just our council, not to brag or anything, but we are
Brag.
the most accomplished, one of the most accomplished councils at our state conference. We sweep the awards again this year. We got top 10 project, golden council. We also got the golden plunger for most money raised. So I feel
Did you call it the golden plunger?
yeah, the golden.
It's quite the award. Okay.
Basically, the golden plunger is whichever council raises the most amount of money for Special Olympics through the polar plunge that year gets sort of
I get
a
it.
golden plunger on a
Plunger, gotcha.
plaque.
You
Okay.
were picturing a toilet plunger, weren't
No,
you?
no, absolutely not. I totally was not.
Yeah, so that was one of the awards we got. And I feel for our council to be there, it's a lot, a big learning moment for other councils, because we're able to share our success and how we get these awards and what the work that we do goes into it. So I feel like it's just like a good moment for us to like connect with other councils as well.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on
Thank you.
on what's going on this year. I'm not sure if you're going to be back here. Hopefully you will be. But if you're
I
not,
hope so. I want to know the announcement.
I know, right?
Where are you going to go to school? So.
I will let you know.
Excellent. Well, as always, you're more than welcome to stay because we have a great night of budgets and technology to talk about. Assuming that's not your cup of tea, you can feel free to leave if you want.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So why don't we keep moving forward? Just so everybody knows, there was a last-minute change to the agenda. The legislative representatives had to make a slight change. Someone wasn't feeling well, and, hope everybody feels better. There's a lot of sickness going around. So we're going to move that till early next month. And, we'll make sure that's advertised. But, so no legislative representatives, as you can see here. So why don't we dig into the digital learning update? Go for it, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm James Scroy, the coordinator of digital learning. I am new to this role this year, so I'm happy to be given the opportunity to provide you this update. So what we're going to go over tonight is our continued work with data privacy and digital equity, what we've been doing for professional development so far this year, changes to our technology infrastructure, new emerging technologies that we're going to pilot, expanding access to digital learning and computer science curriculum, some curriculum showcases, and some of the events and speakers that we have had throughout the year so far. So my approach this year, since I am new to the role but not new to the district, instead of instituting a whole lot of initiatives right off the bat, is really to kind of take a step back and look at this more through a reflective lens and just kind of see what we currently have in place and kind of do an audit of what's working, what's not working, and seeing what we're doing to continue to support and maintain the meaningful teaching and learning that we've been doing throughout the district. So a lot of the work has been focused on refining our practices, modernizing some platforms, engaging families, and supporting a lot of the instructional excellence that we have been known to show over the long term. So the first area, data privacy and digital equity, we are still continuing our work with this and prioritizing our equitable access to student data protection. We're still reviewing and refining some practices for digital privacy, responsible use, and access for all students. This means that making sure that students and teachers are on the same page when it comes to requesting new apps and using new apps. We vet these out through the Student Data Privacy Consortium that we are a part of, making sure that we have those privacy agreements in place. And although there are some case-by-case bases, typically, our policy is that we don't have a policy in place for this, then we typically don't use the resource because we want to make sure that, we don't have any privacy issues moving forward. For professional development this year, we focused on 3 key areas, that being artificial intelligence, cybersecurity awareness, and the evolving instructional practices. For AI and emerging technologies, we kicked the year off with the Day of AI. We had Jeff Riley as our keynote speaker that addressed all the teachers at the beginning of the year, walking us through basically how AI can help enhance our teaching practices. Myself, along with a few others, have taken part in the DESE AI literacy program. Once you go through the program, you can earn a certificate at the end of it. And I've also been exploring the Massachusetts AI Hub sessions, which was just announced recently. Governor Healy announced that there's a statewide partnership with Google to allow AI training for residents. That would apply to everybody, but we can kind of use this as teachers as well. You can earn a certificate in Google AI with that as well. So that's something that we'll explore with maybe the teachers down the line. Also coming up is National AI Literacy Day, which is on March 27th. There's a lot of different companies and websites that are going to be hosting events, but code.org has some great events and workshops out there that both teachers and students can sign up for alike to get to know a little bit more about how to use AI. For classroom technology integration, we've been focusing more on how to support instruction. So a lot of the PD so far has been done on our ClearTouch interactive boards, which were new at the middle school and high school this past couple of years. Canva for classroom design, all the updates to a Google platform, and student Chromebook management. We kind of made more of an effort this year to help our teachers really learn more about the Chromebooks that the students are using, so they can basically use them to their maximum advantage. And then lastly, we are continuing with our cybersecurity and data safety, continuing with the Know Before training program that helps ensure our staff that they're informed of the best practices for protecting student data and maintaining our secure systems. A lot of that comes with the phishing emails and tests that come through. I think it's been fairly successful so far. We get reports on a daily basis. They're calling me up or emailing me directly, or maybe Dr. Dilly as well, verifying if emails coming through are legit or not. So they seem to be catching a lot of that so far. Updates to our technology infrastructure. So the interactive project for the middle school and high school has been completed. We did the high school last year. The middle school got all boards this year. So every single middle school classroom, plus the middle and high school conference rooms, guidance and special ed conference rooms all got a board. And we provided PD sessions for all the teachers at the beginning of the year and as on a rolling basis as needed. For student devices, students in grades 3 and 8 are receiving new devices, new Chromebooks. We are sticking with the HP model, and they have the latest HP Fortises for those. For staff devices, we are maintaining those for this year, but we are due for a refresh starting in the fall. So in the fall, the elementary teachers will get new laptops, and then hopefully, if things go according to schedule, a year later, we'll plan on doing the middle school and high school. On the software side of things, hopefully you all have noticed, we migrated from our Civic Plus website to our new Final Site platform. And with that, we're also in the process of migrating from our communication systems. We currently use Blackboard Connect, and we're going to be migrating over to Messages XRE, which is Final Site's product as well. So we were able to bundle the website and communication systems together. We've also made some upgrades to our labs. So we were able to upgrade the high school music lab with Mac Minis. So now that will help us, enhance some of the audio and music production that comes out of there. We were also able to update the middle school computer lab. We ended up going with HP ProBooks with those, with added RAM to support some more advanced programming, as the needs are dedicated for that. And we're also able to upgrade the elementary libraries to Mac Minis as well to help support our existing iPad carts. Some emerging technologies that we're looking into. We have two things on here. So part of our ClearTouch interactive panels that we put into the middle schools, there's one that they offer that if you see in the graphic there, we have it on a motorized stand where it leans flat. So basically it acts like a giant iPad. So you'll be able to have kids up at it. You can section it off into 4 different sections if you wanted to, so they can all be collaborating on something at the same time. This also allows us to do a little more in-depth 3D modeling, virtual labs, simulations, and so on. So just another way to really kind of get immersed in more hands-on learning for our students. The other piece of technology that we're going to be piloting this year is the MetaQuest 3 VR headset. The middle school purchased one of these in an effort to help engage students, to help them, immerse themselves more in different learning environments and concepts, and really kind of help them out, especially on the SEL side. There are different programs and apps out there that can help build empathy and emotional regulation and mindfulness and so on. So that's something that we're going to be piloting this year, and hopefully, if everything works out, maybe expanding on in the future. Next, so taking a look at the curriculum side and expanding our access to digital learning and computer science. The focus this year has been on more of a vertical alignment between all the grade levels and making sure that we have those transitions from elementary to middle to high school. A lot of our work has been kind of looked at and reassessed using the UBD framework. This kind of allowed us to make some expanded access at the middle school. So because of some of the changes that we went through last year, computer science is now integrated into the general arts program at the middle school, which means it now consists of digital literacy, computer science, and robotics. But the biggest thing out of all that is that students in 8th grade now get computer science, where they didn't previously. They only got it in 6th and 7th grade. So that will help us bridge the gap going into high school, where we're starting to rework that path as well and design some new courses that will really set students on a really solid computer science pathway. So some of the new courses that we're targeting for next year, there's going to be an Artificial Intelligence Foundations course that anybody can take, grades 9 through 12. Computer Science Foundations course is meant to be the prerequisite to get into starting your computer science pathway at the high school, as well as an Applied Entrepreneurship and Project Management course. Within all this as well, we've always have done, I'm sorry, not always, but the last few years, the departments have done common assessments. So with this work, we've been doing a mid-year review, always looking over our stuff to make sure how we can make these better. Are we really assessing students on what they need to be assessed on and really analyzing the data that comes back for that? So we've been doing a lot of planning around that and kind of helping inform ourselves at the end of the year to come up maybe with some strategies to make some adjustments to our teaching or adjust the assessments in a way that is most beneficial to students. So now is kind of my favorite part of this. I did throw in some examples of some of the work that all of our grades have been doing throughout the district, and it's really a good chance to showcase a lot of the good work that our students and teachers have been doing. There's a lot of fun and innovative opportunities out here. So this first one is an Olympian research project in 1st grade. Students use PebbleGo to do their research, then use ChatterKids to put it all together. So ChatterPix is a nice, fun app there. Stop motion, students were able to basically code that red ball to basically go through all the different computer screens using stop motion. And then our 3rd grade students did a Macy's Day robot parade, so where they designed their own balloons and floats and did some green screening and coding to make everything all go together.
Okay, that's awesome.
Also at the elementary level, they've used a lot of Lego robotics. In this example right here, they had to program a robotic windmill, a Lego windmill. Over at Batch, students were working on a marble run where they would design the maze on the Chromebook first and then kind of build it in real life and test their marbles. And then they also did a geography project using the iPads. At the middle school level, this is our robotics course, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. The first one, they created a robotic arm where they were able to attach sensors to an arm and actually make the robot and control the robot through those sensors.
That's awesome.
So with this as well, our robotics teacher, Wendy Byrne, has done a phenomenal job with this class. She recently, or within the last couple of years, applied for the MassQ grant and got it. So with those funds, she was able to purchase about 3 or 4 3D printers for the classroom. So that's where a lot of the stuff that you see here comes from. So one of the projects that they worked on is that they created a prototype They printed out 3D glasses and put a Raspberry Pi camera in it, and it's meant to basically interpret sign language. And then lastly, one of the most current projects that they're working on is that they're using and programming microbits to basically learn about how stoplights work and all the science behind that. So they would program the microbits to make those lights on the breadboards light up as such. Also at the middle of high school, our digital literacy courses and, our library media specialists are both running this digital literacy course. So there's been a lot of focus on, in this example here, they use Canva to create the poster, but there's been a lot of focus on digital citizenship and how to behave online. And our freshman media literacy, our specialist has been taking the freshman seminar courses and doing some AI lessons with them. Everything ranging from just how AI works in the background to teaching them the ethics behind it all, when to use it, when not to use it, the biases that come without it, come with it as well, and kind of the good, the bad, and everything else in between to kind of give them that foundation to basically start using it ethically and the way that we want them to be using it. This is a nice precursor to the courses that we're introducing at the high school for next year. Some speakers and events. So we've had a few people come in. These are mostly at our high school level in our department. We had Eric Gerard, the founder and CEO of Brunt Workwear, came in and spoke to our marketing students. We had some professionals from CBID, forensic consulting professionals. They also do forensic accounting, came in and talked to our accounting students. We did have Detective Lucci come in and talk to all of our elementary students about digital citizenship and how he sees things and how students are behaving online and kind of what he sees things, how he sees things as a police officer, to try to relate it back to them. And then lastly, one of the biggest events that happened just this past week was actually a really cool one that myself and Michelle Caulfield came with us to chaperone. We had the pleasure of taking a group of girls to Gillette Stadium to this Digital Divas boot camp that Blue Mantis was putting on. The whole event was based on encouraging young women to explore careers in technology. So it was hosted by Microsoft, Lenovo, Fortinet, and Rubrik. And so each of these all had a station there, and all the girls from, there's probably about 15 schools there, maybe 200 kids total. They all took part in a live cybersecurity attack simulation. So they all chose different roles and all rotated throughout these different stations, but they played the role of the CEO of the company, they played the role of the network engineer, public relations, everything that went from start to finish with this. There was a table there where they had a computer, a router, all your cables and all that, and part of this was your server just went down, you got to get the internet and everything back up, here you go, let's go figure it out. And they were able to program their stuff back online. So just the live experience that they went through, they just got so much out of it. And any downtime that they had, they spent networking with the different partners that were there, and really talking about different pathways that maybe could lead to an internship down the line or something like that. So it was a really cool event that our students liked, and they really kept asking if they do this next year that they really want to be a part of it. So it was a fun event that luckily, if Senator Tarr was here, he actually nominated us to go. That came across our desk through him. So I'd like to thank him for that because it really was an amazing experience. So with all that, that is our presentation. Do we have any questions?
That's it?
That's it. I mean,
Anybody?
First of all, this seems amazing. Yeah, thank you to Senator Tarr for helping us out with that. Who did you say, who put it on?
Blue Mantis was the company that put it on.
Blue Bantus, okay.
Yeah.
And just a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
The devices and switching them in third through eighth, what are you, third and eighth rather, what are you seeing with that? Are a lot coming back in good condition? Do they need, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but looking at.
We
it's a long
run the
time.
gamut of it. We do offer the optional insurance, which we have about maybe half people sign up for us. And that's one of the things I might be looking at for next year is kind of rethink about the insurance that gets offered. So right now it's primarily 6 through 12 because in the elementary schools, they don't typically take the devices home. They stay in carts. It's open to anybody, but we'll really make the push on. If anybody wants insurance on their devices, then you're more than welcome to sign up for it. But there's been some wear and tear for sure that we would see, sometimes, accidents happen and it's just, it doesn't take much. A quick drop on that will break a screen, it'll break a hinge cover and all that. Like it just, accidents happen. And yes, we are seeing that, but not at a really high rate right now. I think it's about average from what we've been seeing the last couple of years.
How do the devices function? I mean, they're going 5 full academic years on those same devices.
Correct.
How are they actually operating in year 5?
In year 5, they're operating pretty well. And sometimes, I mean, again, you're going to see the wear and tear on it, but sometimes the reason for the refresh too is because MCAS will dictate a lot of that. Their operating system can only go so far. So once it gets outside of that, we need the refresh in order to maintain our, not even just MCAS, but, College Board and all those different other tests that we have to take on that. But usually if they've been taken care of, they hold up pretty well after the 5 years. And even after that, those become our loaner pool. So we still have some good devices that if kids forget it, or if, it's damaged, needs to be out for repair for a while, we have that good loaner pool. So they'll never be without a device.
So is that standard that they're replaced in 3rd and 8th, or is that just this year that you sort of cycle through?
I think starting this year will be that cycle. So basically throughout any student's career here, they will receive 2 Chromebooks.
And they're
In
not
their
necessarily
12
new,
years.
like a 3rd grader's not necessarily getting a new Chromebook, and 8th graders, but they are refurbished or what?
No, they're new.
They're new.
Yep, they're
Okay, so the reason I ask is because a 3rd grader, what they're needing is pretty low level versus someone who's like in 11th or 12th grade. So by the time that those kids that maybe need more computing, are a lot of those kids needing to purchase their own devices at home to get through what needs to be done, or you think the older Chromebooks are sufficient for the older students?
Well, they'd be
Get a
the
new
8th
one in
graders.
grade.
Yeah, but then in 8th grade, you have a 4-year-old Chromebook. I don't know. I'm just asking.
No,
No,
are you
no,
getting
you
a
get a new
brand
one.
new one in 8th grade?
You get a brand new one in 8th grade, so you have
Right.
you'll have it through 8th grade through by the time you graduate.
Right, so, so I just, you know what I'm saying? Because
So some of it do rely on it as for the device at home,
yeah,
for sure, to get their, whatever they need for, a device at home.
I think the idea, and I know what you're saying, because I thought the same thing before, is like, I wonder if there's a way which the first 2 years are 9th and 10th, and then they get recycled to 3, 4, 5, and then 11 and 12 are new, and then, 6, 7, 8 get the 3rd years of them. So like, instead of one person having it for 5 years, I wonder if there's a way where the first 2 years of the cycle would be the high schoolers, 9, 10, and 11 and 12, and then after that 2 years, they go to like 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th. So that way the high schoolers are never more than 2 years out of date. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and that's something we can certainly look at. We can look at any of this.
Is that what you're thinking about more?
yeah, that's exactly, I think you were putting it, just,
I mean, there's not a lot of high computing for most of this.
No, there is, but
They're-
it's also
they're
the
used
condition of devices that come back as
Yeah.
well.
Not,
like when I had 3rd graders, they used a little bit, and now that I have high school, they're if it's not working, they're in trouble, like they're rely on it 100%.
You use it for gym, right, to check in to do your gym ticket, right? You use it in every.
So I just, that's just like the use
Right.
level, if it's matching with something that really needs to be newer. And again, you're talking to someone who's clearly not a tech person, clearly. I'm like, barely making
Fair
it
question,
through.
absolutely.
Mr. Friedman, through you, just to add to that, I think it's worth asking that question and looking. I think what you find a lot, the older they get, the Chromebooks are 5 to 6 year life with the software, and they're able to still take all the updates, and they're using them a lot. They're functional. I think some might find just limitations with Chromebooks in general, at which point they're using other things. But I think for what we're using them for the most part, that 5-year cycle seems to work pretty well as an entry point. But we can definitely think about, taking into account other models if we get a sense that that's not working right.
Mr. Goodman, just-
yeah, please.
I was just gonna say, on the insurance, I'll just say as a parent, I always forget if my kids have it, because it's a multi-year plan, and that would be one thing that I would request. Like, I don't know where to look to even know, do I have the insurance still or not? And so like, if we fall out, if my family falls out of it, it's not because I don't want to, it's just like, I
Right.
heard, one year I bought it twice, and I was told, oh, you actually already have the insurance, you paid for it again, and so,
something we do.
that would be the one thing where, like, it would be nice just to know, beginning of every year, like, you don't have it or whatever, or like, you already bought it, because I got the email and I bought it, and apparently I bought it for.
Yep.
whatever.
And we've been looking at that as well. So the email I sent out at the end of the summer, beginning of the summer, and then again at the end as school was starting, was just for those who had just expired or did not have insurance. So if you did not receive an email, then you were good. But yes, there's definitely a way that we can kind of, close the loop on a lot of this stuff, so make sure there isn't double pays or purchases or anything like that.
So from my perspective, I'm sort of the opposite in that I look at it as a challenge of how much electrical tape or what I can screw back together. I'm like, I got this. I could do this. No, I as somebody who works a lot in technology and is really boring. If someone wants to do a seminar in data security and financial compliance, I'm there for you. But I'm pretty sure no one wants to hear that. One of the things I appreciate is what goes on underneath a lot of this. The ability not just to have privacy but security, and they're two different things, is phenomenal when you're talking about the number of people accessing material online in a school system, especially when you're talking about kids. And, there are no data breaches that we're hearing about. Because they don't exist. And to make sure that happens is a massive undertaking. The hardware that goes on with all of this, just so people understand the connection between, I know we're going to talk about budgets. A lot of these are CapEx items that go through the town and end up being approved that way. So there's a lot of interaction between what you see here as well as the town budget as well. I agree with a lot of what's being said of like this constant evaluation of like what's the longevity of a machine. But I just want to applaud you in saying, one, what goes on behind the scenes with networking, with security, with all that fun stuff that goes on in the background. I'm very appreciative of that. And at the same time, looking to say, what else is out there? And some of the new things, like I was looking at the pilot programs. That's some pretty cool stuff. And I think our kids need to be exposed to new things. Maybe not all of it works. I get that. And maybe not all of the initiatives become something wildly useful. But you have to keep looking. We're not in the world anymore of like, hey, let's teach BASIC for 10 years. For those that remember what BASIC programming language is. You've got to keep expanding because that's just the way the world is going right now. And you can't ignore AI, and that's going to be an initiative that we're looking at across the schools as part of our big rock. So I guess this long-winded speech is just saying, look, there's always a lot that you need to keep reevaluating, and but we also appreciate the fact that there's a lot on your plate, and so thank you for the work you're doing, and for more importantly, protecting our kids, not just in a physical realm, but in a cyber realm too, and that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I was
just
like,
a-
you?
No. Well, one comment and one question. So the comment is just, I think you can tell you're doing a good job because we've heard about some of these projects already, because other schools are coming in with their presentations and they're talking about some of the things that are happening. AI has been a big topic of a lot of things. Like I actually think for NRPS 2030, AI should almost be its own standalone segment of the proposal, but it's going to be throughout, I know, the proposal either way.
Yep.
The robotic hand we've heard about because people are talking about it, so I think that's a compliment to what you guys are doing. I guess my question would be more budgetary related because we cut like 26 positions in the last 2 years. We've cut full programs in the last couple of years, and I know some of them fell within your departments. I know that, like you mentioned, computer science was cut at 6th and 7th grade. I believe digital learning was cut at least at some of the elementaries, or it was scaled back. So I'm just curious. You mentioned a little bit with computer science. You added in 8th grade. I think that's because it was lost at 6th and 7th grade. Is that correct?
It's still offered in 6th and 7th grade. It's not offered to, so basically as a general art, not necessarily everybody gets it. They'll get it at some point, but previously every single student got computer science 6th and 7th grade, either first semester or second semester. But now moving to a general art, it might not be till 7th grade they have it or whatever, but at least we now have a clear, they can get it in every grade.
Okay, and then what about at the elementary school? What's been done to kind of offset the loss of the digital learning in the elementaries? Like, and can you talk
So-
about
so-
what the change was?
In the elementary, I think we are down a specialist, I think technically at the hood. So we do have a specialist that floats between the little and, we have a specialist that floats between the little and hood that teaches K through 4. We have a district specialist that teaches 5th grade at Hood and Little, and then we have a specialist at Batch who teaches K through 5. So we are covered in all the schools, we're
So
just
it's
a
the
person
time-
down.
The time was cut for digital learning. Is that what it was, Dr. Daly? Or-
No, it was the FTE. So, Mr. Friedman, through you.
Yeah,
So,
please.
I'll take a moment to build here,
Yeah.
to thank Jim for all that he's done. He stepped into this role as a teacher last year, when Dr. Downs left mid-year, kind of finished out the second half of the year, jumped right into a lot of these projects. We're not changing our website every day, right? So having to take that on in your first few months, having to take on just some of these massive pieces have been huge. The digital learning department, we had a digital learning specialist at each of the elementary schools. We cut one of those positions 2 years ago, or 3 years ago? I can't remember now.
I think too.
2 years ago, we cut a technician from Jim's department. And then last year, with all of the shuffling, we lost digital learning positions as well at the middle school and had to shift those around. So internally, with Jim able to move up, we were able to hire back one of those people that we had originally let go. But the overall loss to his department is 3 cuts within the last couple of years. So part of being new is also a challenge to try to advocate. Jim's done a great job trying to advocate for the need in his department with the number of devices that we have in our district, with all of this technology that's coming out in all of our classrooms. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is he set up all of the televisions and everything at this building this summer. So we had a huge project this summer to do as well. So really, he did a great job advocating for those new positions. We're not able to bring them forward at this time, and they are part of our restoration. They weren't, you're going to hear tonight what our priority restoration items are, but those are still cuts from the last 3 years that we have not been able to restore. That is not a sustainable model, but we're making the best we can for the interim. Jim's doing a lot of hands-on things as well. In addition to running the entire tech team and all the digital learning work and the entrepreneurship department, which, I'm glad you shared some of the marketing stuff because sometimes that gets lost, that you're also in charge of that. He's also in the library helping out with Chromebook and help tickets. So he's really been pitching in, doing a lot, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Dr. Daly, then, so I forgot the technician also was another cut, and we had a lot of concerns about like the number of tickets that were coming in. Are we able to keep on top of that? Do we have to outsource any ever? And what specifically for the digital learning at the elementary? Was it just a cut in time that they're spending on it? Or, like, I just want to know how it flows through, like the impact of the cuts that
Yeah.
were made.
I'll let Jim speak to you, but I'll say that the cutting, so our digital learning specialists at each elementary school were building-based teachers, professional development providers with a tech background as well. So they would do some tickets, what we call sort of tier 1 things. And then if it had to be escalated to get some of our technicians or network admins involved, they would. With the cuts, there was absolutely no way to do that at the Hood Little because that position is now split among the 2 buildings. And it was severely pulled back at the Batch as well. So we had to increase the amount of time that our network administrators and our technicians are putting in to handle tickets. So, wait times are increased, the time it might take for a student to get a device back, if something's broken or damaged. These guys do a great job, and so we're managing, but, we talk all the time about stress levels. Never mind if somebody, has to call in sick, right? And then you've just got a huge wait line for help. So, losing those positions, that again, that was part of the ESSER piece, right? So we added all these devices, we added support, we lost those positions, and we really, they were needed. They were always needed. We were able to use those ESSER funds to support them. We needed to keep it going. We weren't able to do so.
Thank you.
Yep, so keeping up with the tickets, it hasn't been, it's been a little bit of a challenge, but we've been able to do it between our district K through 12 K through 12 DLS, and we do have a part-time technician that do travel between all the buildings, so they are able to bring devices back, or sometimes they troubleshoot on site. So anything that we can do to minimize that travel time and keep the devices in the building for the students up and running, we do that. I jump on stuff when I travel around to the buildings too. If I have to troubleshoot some things here and there, I'm more than happy to do it. So right now, we've been maintaining, but it could be a challenge down the line for sure.
I would just echo, just to sing praises of his team. We have a retired teacher, Miss Dasho, who's, you know, we are so lucky. We are so over the limit in what she's given this district that she stayed on part-time in retirement to help us through this crunch. I mean, we had a technician, we lost it. She's like, I'll keep going. So she's here a few days a week helping out and bridging some of those gaps. That's a huge testament to just sort of her commitment. She worked in this district for many years and continues to help us. So, but his entire team really has pulled together and works hard. So
We make cuts work.
we do the best we can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Anybody else? Anything?
I
Oh.
kind of interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's okay. It was just along with the AI, also just, when you were talking about the faculty had like a learning day or anything like that, because I feel like at this point, the kids might know more than us and the faculty and things like that. Is there more plans for that, or?
There are more plans for that. I did provide personally myself at the beginning of the year as well, specific PD, so make sure that we have our kind of messaging to the teachers out there as well too, making sure that they kind of know the ins and out about how it works and the bias, and it doesn't always give you reliable information. So we want to make sure that they're comfortable with it first before we start kind of bringing it to the student level. So
Yeah.
that was my, kind of initial kind of foray into it this year. But again, as plans start going on, maybe towards the end of the year, I'll start offering more frequent sessions, whether after school, before school, whatever, works within the teacher's schedules to kind of make some of those sessions more readily available. And that will, I think, really be the focus in the next couple of years, especially, next year. That will be, I think, providing however everything works out here. Like one of my big focuses or initiatives for next year is really hit the ground running with that.
Okay.
I'll say we have professional development days. It's been a part of that. A lot of teachers have made that their professional practice goal through EdEval. We're working as an administrative team. I'm on the council for the state who's trying to develop some kind of playbook, handbook to make it more user-friendly, and not just for teachers, but for everyone in education. And then I've been working with our administrative team, just really challenging people to think about what they're using, how they're using it, because it's everything from ethics to, trying to prevent students from cheating, but also we're doing them a disservice if we're not teaching them how to use it properly. And I extend that to, teachers' first thing is like making sure it's how we use it with students. I'm thinking, how do I use it with administrators? How do I use it with teachers as well, and try to manage all those things? So much changing every day, but Jim's doing a great job with that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I can imagine it's such a hard line for teachers to be walking with the students.
One more. One more.
Yeah.
Just thank you for the website.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It was a much needed update, and I can find things now.
Perfect, thank you.
Like
It's
the
still a
school lunch
work in
menu, which
progress,
is
but
the
we're getting
hot
better.
topic.
Yep, so thank you, thank you.
The school lunch menu. The kid, they know now right where to go to find what that lunch is going to be.
Perfect.
You can create a link.
No, we don't
a
do that.
Favorite.
No,
We'll talk
we don't
about
do
it.
that.
Okay. All right, good. Anybody else? Anybody? Yeah, please.
Okay, I did have a quick question. Do you manage the accessibility devices for disabled students that need them as well?
Yes.
How often do those devices get replaced? Or is it a set schedule like the 3rd and 8th grade, or does it depend?
It's not really a set schedule because those are, the only time they've had to be replaced is they've been damaged. But otherwise, most of them are on, let's say iPads or Apple products. So when we've bought in those, within the last couple of years, they tend to last 7 to 8 years, the lifespan of an iPad or device. So we haven't really had to replace those due to age yet for those assistive technology devices.
Just to answer, so through, some of those things might come up through a team meeting, and there might be a suggestion that the app needs, a new app is needed or a new update. Part of what Jim did as teacher, we talked for years about having sort of an expert on the team, and so he's still kind of that person, but we got to train someone. But to really know how to use those tools with students, because we say it all the time, for some students, that is their voice. And it's so important that they have it working perfectly, that it's backed up, that you understand the systems and the backups and the pieces. But, so I think that would drive it. We don't really have a refresh cycle because it's really case by case, depending on what that particular need is. But as Jim said, with the iPads, they do last a long time, and the apps are able to update. But if they ever get to a point where they can't update, similar to this, Jim and I just spoke the other day about some administrative uses. For example, psychologists do their testing on iPads, so they will reach a cycle. It's not necessarily a refresh cycle, but they'll let us know, like, oh, this test that we use no longer can be supported, so we have to start thinking about budgeting for an update there. So it's sort of it's a little different cycle, but it's usually brought about by referrals.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Very much.
Thank you.
We may discuss this later, but Mr. Shigori also made a great one-pager that we can share out. So that's
It's already out.
yeah, it's already out.
Already out.
It's already here.
So that's a trend that I'm now sharing with all of our presenters.
I love it. It was great. That's an excellent one pager.
Good start.
It's because you're in sales. All right.
This one is.
All right, let's move into the fiscal year 2027 preliminary budget. Yeah, we're gonna go out here for this one.
All right, I have some copies of
Am I running over somebody? Maybe I'm running over myself.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That mug is awesome.
It's just enough water for about a third of a day.
Is it okay if you just keep your right
scroll.
PDF on my, or do you want me to try it?
That's all right.
Make it bigger?
You like all my tabs? Tabs, my folders.
All right, I can just click on each one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot to do that, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna walk through about a slide deck presentation, kind of hits the highlights of the preliminary budget proposal that is before us for fiscal year 2027. Typically, we want to talk about start with the macro level, talk about the revenue sources coming in that fund municipal and school budgets, some of the structural challenges that all communities, as well as North Reading, certainly in the last few years has faced when trying to fund a municipal and school budget. We'll get into the budget drivers, which haven't really changed in many years, so if you've been tuned in for the last several years, we're certainly dealing with those similar type of drivers that are really driving the increases, driving the numbers, and the changes from cost center to cost center from each year. We'll get into really the priorities, and we'll get into some of the numbers with some pie charts and some charts with some staffing and some enrollment, and you'll kind of get a good idea of where the priorities are from the administration as we present the budget over to the school committee and the community for feedback. We'll talk about some of the staffing and the positions that we're recommending for enrollment-driven increases. At the elementary level, we have some increases in enrollment. And then we'll get into strategic plan initiatives, restoration of some of the positions that Mr. Buckley talked about we've lost over the last 2 years. So we'll get into some of those numbers. I always like to conclude with the offsets. We have grants, we have revolving accounts, we pay user fees, we have tuition-based programs for full day K and preschool that we are offsetting the request to the community and to the town, the appropriation. So we will hit on some of those as well. And then we'll talk about some conclusions and obviously leave time for discussion and questions. So these are the major revenue sources. Again, this chart hasn't changed the percentages for a number of years, but
clearly with a community like North Reading and most communities obviously across the Commonwealth, and we're going to see local property taxes fund the majority of the revenue that makes up both, school and municipal budgets. The next largest piece of the pie is going to be our state aid. We have our Chapter 70 aid, which has come out at the end of January, and we can see what those numbers look like. We have our local government unrestricted aid. That's going to be the next largest piece of the pie, and this is a little over 11%. Then about pretty close, we have some local receipts that come in that help fund budgets through meals tax, trash fees, permitting, licensing. Those all help make up a piece of the pie. And then the school department, similar to maybe the enterprise funds on the municipal town side, we have our revolving accounts, things we charge and assess user fees for, extracurricular programs, performing art programs, fine art programs, athletic programs, full-day kindergarten, we're still charging a tuition, preschool. And we have our federal and state grants that we rely on. Most of those are entitlement grants that we will receive annually. So all those things make up the piece of the pie for the revenue, and they're relatively flat. They don't change significantly, and that presents this next slide some of the structural challenges that are at place when funding a school budget. So certainly, when we have this top chart here, if you can see it, the blue graph represents the fixed costs. And when we look at things like health insurance, some retirement costs, maintenance costs, things that, workers' comp, life insurance, Medicare, all these things that are fixed that we have to fund and we have to support annually, we look at that growth from year to year, and it's a structural deficit because those are growing at a much larger pace, with, in most cases, double-digit increases or over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% increases from year to year, when we have our revenue, which through Proposition 2.5 is fixed at that 2.5% growth. Sometimes if new growth, it might be a little bit greater than that. But the pace of those fixed costs, things that we have to fund as a town and school, essentially grow at a much higher rate. So that presents the challenge right from the beginning, from the macro level, when we try to fund both the school budget. There's not a lot of other revenue options out there. We are very aggressive in pursuing federal and state grants and looking at any other area of revenue. But those options are limited. And when we do pursue and we receive a grant or an opportunity that we're aggressive in doing so, that there's usually limited on what we can go spend that funding for. It has to be for a specific purpose. And sometimes that funding is for a year or two, so there's limited options in new revenue growth for grants and other opportunities. And then the school department has our contractual obligations. We have our own contractual obligations with our employees and our employee unions. We have our own fixed cost increases that for transportation, for utilities, for maintenance, that we've seen grow at a really high rate in some of those operational costs to run the district from a maintenance utilities perspective. Everything is going up. We've seen that since the pandemic, since COVID, inflationary increases, and we've felt it. And I think that's a situation across really, the nation, certainly the Commonwealth, that we are dealing with these high increases. We have a special education cost, always going to be a driver of the budget. We certainly have, and that's a level of uncertainty. And there's changes that happen quickly that we respond to and address, and we've worked very, very closely and hard when we prepare, budgets and cost projections with our special education administration, our staff, to look at what student needs and to drive that department forward. So that is a factor as well. When we look at a history of our revolving and our grants, you can just see, as I talked about, limited options. We've seen some growth over the last couple years, but it's been pretty stagnant since we came out of the pandemic. These last couple years, fiscal 26 and fiscal 27, there's a little bit of growth there because we've gotten some more grants as we've been really aggressive in pursuing some more grant opportunities, and there's been more grant opportunities out there. If Brad Jones was here tonight, he's supported the district with a lot of earmark grant opportunities. And we've also increased user fees to the families for some of these programs. So we've never made those decisions lightly, but we've had to do that to address some of the challenges, field override 2 years ago, to be able to maintain services and not impact the experience for the students. That's always the biggest thing that we're looking to accomplish. So between those things, we've seen a little bit of growth there, but it's limited on what we can do. When we get into our budget drivers, these 4 budget drivers has really been, I've been doing this presentation now for well over a decade. These haven't changed often. And I think that's very common. I think if you were to look at budget presentations across the nation, across Massachusetts, you're going to see these 4 budget drivers be a factor. First and foremost, we have to meet our contractual salary obligations. We have to meet what we've contracted with our employees and our bargaining units. 85% of a school budget, municipal budget, is going to be salaries. That's where how we move the district forward is we invest in our personnel and our staff and our teachers and our educators, our administrators, our support staff, and we have to support those obligations. And that's because 84.5% of our budget is staffing. That's always going to be probably the biggest driver in a school budget. We then have our operational fixed costs, which we have done, I think, a really good job in trying to control these operational costs, trying to think creatively how to control transportation costs, maintenance costs, trying to be creative with utility budgets and do things like modulating boilers and being aggressive with LED lighting initiatives to try to control those costs, to try to put as much of our dollar, as much of the pie towards instructional and education. But we have obligations that we have to meet. The transportation for both regular ed and special ed has gone up 10, 15, 20% on an annual basis. We have to meet those obligations to get students to school safely. We have to support our maintenance obligations to provide a high quality campus at all of our 4 campuses, and we need to make sure HVAC, boilers, plumbing, all those initiatives are met. So those increases happen annually. And then we have our staffing. So we try to maintain specific student-teacher ratios, class size ratios, student class guidelines, particularly in those primary grades. And enrollment's been growing kind of at a moderate level, but we have seen, sometimes we see decreases at the secondary level, and particularly these last few years, but increases at the elementary level. And that's where the most need is and the most fluctuations are in changes to our staffing, as we want to maintain those class sizes, and particularly at those primary grades. So you'll see some requests in the budget later on. And then we have our strategic plan. So that's always in North Reading since I've been here for 13, 14 years. That's always been a working document that guides our new initiatives. It's never been a strategic plan that sits on a shelf. We refer to it, we update it annually, and those initiatives, and many of them are staffing initiatives to move the district forward, is what guides new requests. And we've had to defer a lot of those initiatives because of the challenges, particularly over the last couple of years. And you'll see some moderate requests this year that have been deferred for a number of years to address some mental health and social mental health for students at the primary grades in particular, as well as some curriculum initiatives at the administrative level. So I'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. Then we have our special education costs, funds needed to support anticipated out-of-district tuitions and transportation costs. Those are actually expected to decrease next year. We have worked hard to reallocate costs where appropriate to different areas to make sure we have the right staffing and support systems in place to address our students, our high-need population. Even though we're seeing the same level of students next year that are being educated outside the district, we have, through students aging out and students changing placements, there is a decrease in that cost that we're projecting currently. But again, this is one of the more challenging parts of the budget because that can change quickly. You want a quick question? Yeah.
Just on that point, rather than coming back, I know we had 46 for this year. Is it, you're anticipating the same for next year?
Correct, 46 students, yep. So, but we're seeing some of those students are in less costly placements, in a sense, collaborative placements that we have memberships with that have lower of a tuition. And then we are also seeing a higher amount of state, through the special ed program, reimbursement program, a higher reimbursement amount available to us for next year. And that's because that's always on a little bit of a lag. So we receive a reimbursement from the state for amounts spent on tuitions and transportation for special education over a threshold, and it's always on a couple years lag. So we saw really high increases back a couple years ago in fiscal year 2025. So now we're going to see those funds flow into the district next year to help offset our costs. So it'll be kind of like a one-year increase, and then it'll sort of level off, but we do have that availability as a higher offset for that state program. So what are we requesting and putting as a proposal in our budget to the school committee this evening? We are requesting what we would refer to as a modified level services budget. And what does that essentially mean? It essentially means that we're, first and foremost, meeting level services, that all the services that we're offering today in terms of programs, education, class size guidelines that are being met, elective offerings, the breadth of the curriculum, staffing levels, so forth, would be the same next year, adjusted for those increases and those fixed cost increases, of course. And then it also means that we're looking at increases driven by our strategic plan, again, known as NRHS 2030, to move the district forward. Really kind of modest increases are also being reflected, and we'll get into those a little bit more in detail later in the presentation. But we're certainly looking at adjustments to meet those contractual salary obligations. We have to do that. Include some staffing restorations for identified positions that were reduced in fiscal year 25 and 26 budget cycles. So really high priority positions that the administration has met, received feedback from staff, from principals, administration that we feel like has had the greatest impact over the last 2 years that we're looking to restore. And I'll talk a little bit about what some of those positions are. It's not all 20 plus positions that Mr. Buckley mentioned, alluded to earlier. It's a small amount that we feel like we'll bring back that has had the greatest impact to the education of students over the last 2 years. Small portion of NRPS 2030, I talked about that we would identify as a high priority. And then obviously adjustments to meet our fixed costs for student transportation, utilities, maintenance, adjustments to our out-of-district costs for tuitions and transportations for those students being educated outside the district. And this is a year where those are kind of going down right now, and we think that will change in the future. And at the moment, it does assume that the user fees and the tuition costs to families will be the same as in the current school year. So right now, we're not recommending or proposing any increases, but we're also not recommending any decreases to those user fees or tuition costs. We get into the numbers, fiscal year 2026, as compared to what our recommended or our proposed budget this evening is to the school committee. We can see what some of these major cost centers and expense categories compare from one year to the next. To me, when you look at this table and this chart and these numbers, I think you can see the drivers at play that I just spoke about. You can certainly see that one of the biggest changes is the contractual salary obligations need, as well as our initiatives to restore positions, to address some positions needed for enrollment, as well as to meet some of our NRPS 2030 initiatives. You can see what's driving that salary number increase. Instructional expenses, we always have some inflationary increases there and so forth. So there's a small increase there. That's a lot from that's technology software that goes up that we need to meet. There's operations and maintenance, even though we have increases there to meet some of our contracts to maintain our campuses and utilities are going up. We do have a situation where our wastewater treatment plant program is kind of shifting to sort of a fixed cost because there's now municipal buildings and more buildings other than just this building here being operated through that plant. So that was a little bit of a change. So that's the reason for that decrease, but we're seeing increases in other areas there. Transportation, we have worked really hard to control our transportation costs. We're seeing both special ed and regular ed transportation be on the rise the last several years. This was a bid year for our regular school bus transportation contract. And I'm happy to report that earlier iterations of this budget had this line much higher. But through a competitive bid process, through getting a couple of really motivated companies to come in and want to be a part of North Reading, including our current vendor, who I think has done a really, really nice job, they have proposed almost the same pricing this year that we receive next year. So I think through the competitive bid process and making that a very competitive bid year, we were able to kind of avoid a lot of increases that could have been there. So that was a positive thing. That increase could have been greater. And then the dynamic in those tuitions with having more state aid because of the special ed reimbursement program that funds state aid or state reimbursement for special ed costs, tuition and transportation out of district costs, because that's going to be greater next year, and because we've had sort of a shift in some students being in more costly collaborative placements, we see actually a decrease in that line item. So all in all, what we're looking at is a proposed budget of $42,237,412, which is an increase over this current fiscal year of a little more than 1.4 million, or 3.6%. All right. So these next two pie charts, I'll kind of go through relatively quickly, but I think it just kind of shows you a little bit of where our budget priorities are. Certainly, when you look at these breakdown, and this is kind of how we report our expenses to the Department of Education. We do it through sort of function codes and object codes. So this is no surprise that in any school budget, instructional services, those expenses that directly go to the classroom teachers, school supplies, technology, that's going to be the greatest piece of the pie. And that's certainly the case next year. It's a little bit of an increase. We have our operations and maintenance, those utilities and maintenance to maintain the campuses. The next largest piece of the pie, 8.8%. Student services, that's nursing services, health services, is the next largest piece of the pie, 5.4%. And then we have some of the other smaller pieces. District leadership, kind of administration expenses, just about 3%. Again, that is lower than the state average, which is closer to 4% in that area, and what's been talked about. And some of the other areas have been, make up the next piece of the pie. Tuitions for special education students being educated outside the district is at 5.5%. And again, that piece of the pie, that percentages of the pie is down next year than it has been because of that dynamic that I just spoke of. This next pie chart shows the expense categories a little bit differently. Salaries and compensation for our employees and our professional staff, 84.2%. That's almost always 83 to 84%. That's been very consistent for many, many years, and that would be the case in any school or municipal budget across the Commonwealth. And that hasn't changed significantly for a number of years. And you can just see some of the other categories. What I like to always talk about when I look at this pie chart is, to me, this kind of shows you, even though we're kind of talking about a $42+ million budget that we're recommending to the school committee and to the community this evening, much of that $42 million is fixed. So we have our salaries, we have our compensation. A lot of this, 84% of that amount is fixed cost to meet those obligations. A lot of the 3.5% of contractual services are things we have to meet. Utilities, tuitions, transportation, those are all fixed cost contractual obligations that we need to do to continue those services. So when we're talking about a $42 million, it's a very small amount, maybe $1 million or so, that 2.3% of supplies and materials, some professional development, some small cap in there that is really discretionary that when we start to look at the big piece of the pie. We've talked about enrollment. So this is our 10-year enrollment projection district-wide. So this is pre-K through 12. We are at 2,336 students. This is October 1 enrollment as reported to the state. So next year, we are seeing increases at the elementary level. So we're seeing higher kindergarten class sizes, higher first grade class sizes over the last few years. We're seeing a little bit of a dip at the secondary high school level as some larger class sizes kind of graduate and some smaller class sizes from the middle school make their way onto the high school. So that's why it's kind of the same next year. It's going to be somewhat level over the next few years, even though we are seeing an increase at the elementary level. Then 5 years out, though, we are going to see an increase. That's the projections, what they show. So we see we're going to get back to that 22,400 plus enrollment that we were at several years ago. Okay, now I'm going to talk about staffing. We moved on to the staffing part of the agenda. So some of the enrollment positions that we are recommending, this is part enrollment driven, part restoration driven in some cases, is we did eliminate the 3 full-day kindergarten general paraprofessionals over the last couple of years through budget reductions. And when we hear from principals, that is one of the things they speak to that has had one of the largest impacts in providing education and support and early intervention and just for kindergarten students and students in those primary grades. So that is a high priority for both to meet the enrollment that's at the kindergarten level, because for many, many years, if we had enrollment that had kindergarten students, classes that were 18 or higher, they needed to have a general paraprofessional also in that classroom. And we haven't met that ratio over the last couple of years because of the reduction. So we want to go back to meeting those ratios because of the enrollment is going to mean that every kindergarten class size section next year will be 18 or higher. It's necessary to restore those general paraprofessionals into those kindergarten classrooms. And that is a very high priority by our elementary principals. There's a classroom teacher being recommended at the primary grade 1 at the little school. So because of the higher kindergarten enrollment is now moving up to grade 1. To maintain those class size ratios of 18 to 22, and particularly in those primary grades, that teacher would be necessary. So that's being recommended. And then when we look at our special education department and some of the reductions that kind of have happened, the middle school has a big population of high need students students on an IEP moving from the elementary into grade 6. So this special education teacher is necessary to maintain those ratios and to work within those programs for that cohort of students coming from grade 5 to grade 6. So these are the enrollment-driven positions, kind of part enrollment, part restoration in many ways, of 5 positions at a little more than $281,000. That's included in the budget proposal. Some other staffing requests. So now we look at restoration. Mr. Buckley, and we've talked about this in meetings if you've been following, we've cut 20-plus positions over the last 2 years. So when we look at this table and we hear feedback from staff, from principals, from administration and so forth, we feel like this 3.5 of FTE increase by adding a special ed teacher, adding in 0.5 academic interventionist to address the loss of professional positions that have occurred at the middle school, that would be a high priority to restore those positions to, again, that high needs population and to provide that academic support in areas of math and reading. The district level, we reduced a 0.5 floater school nurse 2 years ago from a 1.0 position down to a 0.5 FTE position. We want to restore that and make that district-wide floater nurse back to a 1.0 equivalent full-time position. There's certainly school health and safety needs. There's state mandates coming down from a nursing standpoint that we're following closely that increase would be necessary. And then we also reduced, if you remember, the academic intervention tutors at the elementary level that were particularly addressing some learning loss, that were addressing early intervention strategies for math, for reading at the elementary level, essentially a 15-hour-a-week tutor position at each elementary school had a significant impact, and that is a priority to restore. So from a restoration standpoint, 3.5 FTE, a little more than 236,000. So those are all enrollment-driven, level services-driven, maintain class size ratios, meet our high-need student population appropriately, restore some interventionists, restore the photo-school nurse. Now we're looking at what is beyond level services, and this is when we get into that, modified level services is a very small piece of the pie, really. But we would be asking for a 1.6 FTE increase, and it would be this 0.6 FTE school adjustment counselor has been on the strategic plan for many years. It's been part of many preliminary budget proposals and iterations that have not quite made it all the way through the budget process. Kind of the last couple of years got reduced as we balanced at the very end in late April, early May. But this 0.6 FTE school adjustment counselor would allow for a designated school adjustment counselor to be at every school, and particularly the 3 elementary schools, where currently there is still one being shared between the Hood Elementary School and the Little Elementary School. And we think that's essential to provide that mental and that social emotional support that is necessary at each building. Not talking a huge increase, a huge ask, but that would achieve that. The next request is a humanities coordinator, K through 12, to go along with what was added a couple years ago as the STEM coordinator. We've seen huge curriculum alignment initiatives achieved, that coaching, that all that support that we've gotten from the STEM coordinator position, we want to carry that forward and have that same initiative in the humanities coordinator position. Been part of our strategic plan for a number of years, and that is a high priority next year as well. So that would round out our staffing requests for both restoration, strategic plan, and enrollment. Now I'm just going to kind of get into some of the high-level numbers, and we'll talk about offsets, and then we'll conclude, and I'll get to your questions. So what are we looking at? Our general fund ask, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit more than $42.2 million, which is about $1.4 million greater than our current year, fiscal year 2026. That, again, only 3.6%. We've seen, usually at this point in time, where we might be asking for 5%, 5.5%, because some of those fixed costs initiatives were higher. Then we have our offsets. So these are things that we're funding outside of what our ask is to the taxpayers, what our ask is to the community at the annual town meeting. These are our federal and state grants and those revolving accounts that we take user fees in for. So that is a little more than 4.3, almost $4.4 million next year. Again, the reason for that big increase is that additional state money that's available for special education reimbursement. And that is higher because of 2 years ago, we saw those costs and that baseline rise so dramatically in special ed because of some 14% rate increases at some tuitions for some schools. And now we're seeing that reimbursement come in kind of on a lag. So that's the majority of why that is increasing to that level. And so all in all, you can see when you look at all school funding between our general fund and our grants and our revolving, you can see what kind of funding we're looking at and what increases we're looking at. This to me is a helpful breakdown because I think it sort of in layman's terms kind of shows you what's changing from one year to next. That's the goal of this slide is kind of, look, this is what's changing. We have $40,780,049 of funding that's been recommended, that's been approved for this fiscal year. That's the baseline we're starting with. When you look at what's changing in these major cost center areas, we all know contractual salary obligations for existing staff levels going to be a big piece of the pie. We need to meet those obligations to support and maintain staff of high quality that we want to do. So that a little more than 1.5 million. Our new staffing request that I just talked about is a little more than $684,000. Special education out-of-district tuition decreases because of the changes in placements, not a reduction in students being educated outside the district. What, $150,000. We are seeing special ed transportation and contractual services to address student needs increase, and that is typical. And then we have this additional offset in circuit breaker. That's the special education reimbursement program that the state provides. And that, we see that additional $582,000 amount as an offset next year, also factoring in. Our fixed cost increases, busing, utilities, maintenance, small amount, mitigated in most cases by this wastewater treatment plant dynamic being shifted. And then that's where we get to the 1.4 million. So that's about, big picture, that's kind of what's changing. And that's how we're netting out to the increase of 3.6% of a little more than 1.4 million. And why our request to the community for the appropriation is a little more than $42.2 million. So where are we at currently? This changed recently, like Friday. I didn't get a chance to change the slide. It could be a little bit different than this now. But again, we're recommending or we're proposing $42,237,412, 3.6% higher than fiscal year 26. Where does that stand for a school current budget gap? There's changes. That's a very fluid process, and it's health insurance numbers, fixed cost numbers are changing constantly. This number might be like $146,000 now because of some changes that have happened recently, but that's what we're looking at as a school budget gap. All right, I want to get into offsets. I know I've been going a little bit longer than I expected, but we'll get to your questions. So again, this slide looks to just kind of show you what some of the direct cost is for these programs that we are taking in a user fee for, or we are taking in tuition cost for. So we have our bus transportation. This is non-special ed transportation. These are the big yellow buses to get the students to school each and every day. That costs a little more than $975,000. With the user fee that we are assessing to families, we are taking in annually about $350,000. So that's only about 35% of what that direct cost is. Now, the offset is a little bit greater than that. That's because we're relying on some residual funding that's been in and rollover. But that is what we take in annually for the user fee, which is in the final column currently. For athletics, that program for salaries, coaches, expenses, a little more than $980,000. The user fee, what we are charging, is taking in annually about $335,000. So again, only about 34% of that cost, that direct cost. Extracurricular activities for middle school, high school clubs, not performing arts. For those coordinators and so forth, advisors to work within those programs, provide those extracurricular opportunities for students. $123,000. We take in about $70,000, so that one's close to that 50% ratio. Performing arts, music, drama, theater, about an $82,193. Again, direct costs is a lot more costs that are involved outside of that, but our direct costs in the school budget, what we're taking in from the user fee is about 68% or so. In our kindergarten program, currently to support teachers and paras in that program, that's in the budget, a little more than $1.2 million. And we're taking in about $450,000. So again, about 35% of that cost. Preschool, we increased the tuition last year, $463,000 direct cost. We're taking in about $150,000. That's about 32%. So all in all, for these tuition or user fee-based programs, we're at direct costs of a little more than $3.9 million, and we're taking in less than half of that, $1.4 million, about 36% of that cost is offset by user fees or tuition costs to families. Just really quickly, operating budget history. So we are historically about 4%. That's our 10-year average that we've funded the school budget. And you can see some of those changes, some of the more challenging years with high fixed costs and more challenges. And currently, we are asking for 3.6% over the previous year. 10-year average is 4%. Just really quickly, I mentioned earlier, so I won't go into all these, but we work hard to save money and avoid costs by making everything competitively bid, like school transportation and so forth, state bid contracts, controlling our utility costs as much as possible, working with a couple of different collaborators through SEAM and North Shore Food service programs performed very, very well. That's helped now offset utility costs and other costs that has helped control those utility costs because the food service programs perform so well. We have the use of multifunction school activity buses that we try to shift as many runs for athletics and performing arts and extracurricular as possible to these in-house vehicles to reduce those contractual costs that are high. We work hard just to be diligent in our daily operation and continue to look at solar initiatives. We haven't quite found one that fits, but we continue to look at it. We did an LED lighting project several years ago, so we're doing what we can to maintain and control maintenance and operation costs. So if you look at our conclusions in the last slide, what are we proposing? What's kind of on the table from the administration to the school committee this evening as a preliminary fiscal year 27 budget? What does this budget achieve? It meets our contractual obligations with employee and employee unions. Again, we need to do that. We need to invest in our staffing, our professional staff, our educators. It provides increases for these fixed costs for contractual services, for our maintenance program, busing, utilities, I just mentioned. And we are adding staff to achieve the following: to ensure educationally sound student-teacher ratios are met, especially at the elementary level. So I went over that table and what that does. Enhance adequate health and safety services for all students, staff, and school for the community, trying to restore that 0.5 school nurse, not a lot of money, but would achieve a lot, in our opinion. Enhance current structures to address the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students. That 0.6 FTE school adjustment counselor would certainly help achieve that end. And then ensure appropriate staffing and specialized programs to support students in our high needs population. So restoring some special education staff at the middle school, adding a position because of a higher, students moving up from grade 5 to grade 6 in need of support. That would help us achieve that goal. Meets our operational cost to maintain all the campuses. Same level of services for athletic and fine art programs, allows us to do that and meet those needs. And at the current moment, it assumes the same level of user fees being assessed to families next school year as this school year. Where we go from here, finance planning team will continue to have these conversations about available revenues and what the options are. Fluid process, state aid numbers are coming in, continue to come in, health insurance, fixed cost numbers continue to come in. Budget webinar on March 25th, school committee budget workshop on the 13th, public hearing on the 13th. We have a school committee budget workshop potentially again later in April. We'll look to vote this budget on April 27th. We have until May 1st, I believe, to get it to the town administrator for the annual town meeting. We'll have conversations with the finance committee. Annual town meeting is June. That got June 8th. That got locked in at the moment. June 1st. It got moved up a week. Yeah, June 1st. We'll continue to await state budget actions, and then there'll be a lot of discussion over the next several weeks about the budget, certainly. All right, I was talking for a lot. I'll open up to questions.
Why don't I start with a few comments, and then I'll have questions later.
Okay,
But I'll, in between, you guys can move if you want to, but I'll move in a minute. Couple things, and this is more, my comments are really more around highlighting or emphasizing some of the things you said, or maybe digging a little deeper into them. And I'll sort of go in order, so not necessarily in order of importance. One of the things that got mentioned is some of the costs that we're obligated to handle versus the revenue we get as a town. And healthcare is one of the most obvious ones. Healthcare this year is proposed to be up by, about 12%, if I remember correctly, roughly.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Our revenue grows at 3% for the town. So there is obviously a big gap there that has to be, we have to fulfill healthcare, and yet there is no inherent increase in the amount of revenue we get as a town, so you're inherently looking at a 9% gap just in that piece alone. When we talk about level services, I want to really emphasize this next point. Level services is year on year. That does not mean we are starting from where we were 2 years ago before we cut 20 FTEs in total over the last 2 years. So level services is what do we have after the cuts that we made over the last couple of years. So when someone says, oh, see, we're doing the same thing, isn't that good enough? It's good enough after we've already made 20 cuts. So when we talk about restoration, we're not getting back to where we were 2 years ago. We're doing the minimum in order to meet needs that have been expressed directly from presentations that we saw earlier in the year from all of the administrators that came across from all of the schools. We are nowhere near where we were 2 years ago. So we talk level, I sort of do air quotes about level. We are not level to where we've been in the past. Another thing that I just wanted to point out, and I'll just have two other quick ones, and then I'm sure there's a myriad of questions, and I'll leave it to others and then come back. Enrollment. We keep hearing about enrollment is down. Why are we staffing the way we're staffing? Enrollment's down. If you look at the chart that was presented, over the next 6 years, we're actually up 6%, or 5%, roughly, rough numbers. Yes, I understand that many towns have more significant losses. Take it for what it's worth. We're actually growing. So, hooray to be popular, but just don't look at what other towns' populations are or demographics are. Look at what ours currently is and what we are projecting. Those aren't made up numbers. Those aren't like, wow, we're just trying to fill out budgets for the future. Those are real projections. We can back all of that up. And the last thing I'll say, and again, I'm just, these are just observations and things I want to emphasize. This is something I've said in many meetings in the past. The grant writing and the grants we're talking about here, we have no grant writer. The administration here, the administration you see here, the administration that you don't see here, they are the ones applying for all these grants. And we're very thankful for our local representatives. They give us opportunities for these. But we have no special staff for that. So when we talk about, oh, what's our administration doing, and why do we have so much administration? When you actually look at the numbers, the administration is making us money with the number of grants and the amount of money we get through that. So aside from just applauding the work you guys are doing in your spare time to write grant proposals, there's a reason why we have administration, which is no higher than any other district. In fact, it's lower in many cases, that are actually bringing in revenue to our school system. So those are the points, just the immediate off the top of my head points I wanted to bring up and just emphasize. So, you don't have to respond to them. There'll be plenty of questions to respond to. But just wanted to put that out there. With that, who wants to, I'm sure all your hands are going to raise. Why don't we go right to left? Jennifer, why don't you go and I'll move back over there.
Sure. Thank you so much. This is really clear, and it's clear how much effort you put into the presentation and the work that goes into this all year long. I just want to clarify that the 3.6% increase does include all of the positions, right?
Yes,
About
correct.
the 10 positions, the one that says staffing enrollment position and staffing requests, right?
Correct.
That includes all of it. So it's $120,000 gap with these positions, but as
Correct.
Jeff said, not restored to the 26. Okay. Just because I know you said it twice during the presentation, but I'm still just want to clarify, especially Tim and I know others are going to be getting questions in the community, and I want to be clear about the tuition part. So I understand that there's a lag with the state reimbursement, and so we're going to get more. But does that mean in the next year or two, we're going to be trying to catch up again?
I think what will happen is you'll see it level off.
Okay.
So it will probably stay at the same level as it was next year. In previous years, that it will be next year.
Okay. And then you mentioned that the other reason besides the state reimbursement is students may be in more cost-effective programs. What are those and why?
So they would be in more cost-effective placements,
Placements,
school
yeah.
placements, more at sort of collaborative placements that we have memberships with, SEAM, North Shore.
Yep.
So that annual school tuition, we, based on that cohort of 46 students for next year is just overall less than what it has been.
Okay, Great.
Can I jump in real quickly,
Yeah.
Mr. Connolly? Just on the circuit breaker, like, the idea is just if in year one you have the expense, we have to come out of pocket on it, and then year two you get it back, and if year two is the same expense, then it would be the same funding afterwards. It's just the funding comes a year later,
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, we're just, again, we're fortunate that it's caught up, but it's.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's
I didn't know in the next year or
right.
two, would we be here and be back in the negative? Okay. And then, I know everyone has a lot of questions, so just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to clarify in the tuition, sometimes a student might age out or move out.
Yeah.
It's very high, and somebody else comes in, but they're lower.
Lower, okay.
Yeah.
So that's
what-
sort of, it's
all
not necessarily
those
something
things at play.
that happened with one student, but sometimes. those
Yeah, it's a
things
different
happen.
group of students.
Cyclical, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just for my own clarification, because I'm not familiar, what exactly does a humanities coordinator do, or what would their responsibilities be?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So this is a very similar situation to where we were a couple of years ago when we were faced with the STEM coordinator. So similar position, math, science for STEM. Humanities coordinator is ELA and social studies. This is all part, since I arrived in this district, we've been trying to sort out two things. One is the curriculum leadership model. When we shifted, when Ed-Eval and all the mandates changed around Ed-Eval, we in the old system, we had department heads evaluated staff. They no longer do that. All of our leaders are teacher leaders. They do a fantastic job. They receive a stipend. Over the last 15 years, we've been always revisiting that model and working at it. We now have a model where our teachers are fully in the classroom. They don't have release of time. Part of that time used to be used for those observations, which they're no longer doing. I'm very concerned that if we don't have this other piece, that we're going into negotiations with the teachers next year, we're going to be faced with questions about that model surviving, very similar to where we were. As I talked to you 3 years ago, I said if we don't deliver on this now, we're going to be right back to trying to go backwards, which would cost us probably double what we're trying to talk about now. So this year, and our teachers are doing a great job, I want to say that again, but I've been meeting with our leaders throughout the year because of the inequities, because the math science leaders have that administrator over them.
Okay.
The social studies and ELA do not. So this would be about restoring that balance. In a perfect world, we would have a leader in each department that is administrative, that can do all of the things that you've seen Michelle Caulfield, our STEM leader, present on, things we weren't able to do before, and take a lot of that evaluative burden off our principals and Mr. Colleen and others that have over 20, close to 30 people they're observing, which is sort of unheard of. So we're trying to redistribute that so that it's a more meaningful system. So this would be a very similar model, but with ELA and social studies.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
First of all, again, that's really great presentation, and, the fact that I have so few questions, one, highlights that finance is not my strong suit, but it also highlights how incredibly detailed that presentation was, because I don't actually have a lot of questions. Every time I had a question, you then kind of answered it. But just for the people listening and just for discussion, kindergarten tuition, or what families are contributing, is currently $2,500. And just as a reminder, that what's the history there versus the NRPS 2030 target, just in terms of looking back, looking forward?
So it's been, I would say we had a goal several years ago, kind of when we put together NRPS 2025, that we would be able to be universally free, offering universally free full-day kindergarten, probably by the end of 2025 initially.
Even sooner.
It was the previous strategic plan,
Yeah, it was 2 years early. but
2 years
we've
earlier.
Delayed it each year.
Yeah, it's been deferred, it's been delayed. We've tried to address sort of phase-in plans to achieve that. So if, initially it would have been free by the end of our previous plan, NRPS 2025, obviously we didn't meet that. It was part of the override, it would have been achieved in that override. So we still have, it's still an objective, it's still a goal, we still look at how to phase that in, we're still looking at ways to make that easily accessible to all families that desire as such or in need, so we're looking at ways to do that and making changes, but because of the challenges, we have not been able to make any more progress by reducing the tuition lower than $2,500. And over several years, we got it from $4,250 down to $2,500, and we've kind of been stuck at that number.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, I say this every time, but the state mandate requirement through the Student Opportunity Act is that we should have a goal of reducing and eliminating a pre-K fee, which we haven't even touched yet.
Right.
We're one of only a handful of districts that even has a kindergarten fee at all. So we're way behind what we're supposed to be doing in terms of that. Michael did a brilliant job of sort of slowly phasing it out over time. We cut that fee in more than half. We were one of the top 3, I think, tuitions in the state. We now have it down to $2,500, and we've seen a huge number of students opt for full-day kindergarten now that that barrier's been removed. And I'd be remiss, I thought we were going to be speaking with our representatives tonight, and Senator Tarr and Representative Jones, who we will get to see in a few weeks. But what they did to advocate for us with the earmark funding was huge. That money has been used to help to reduce those costs and eliminate those costs, hopefully in the future, for those students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. So that's our goal, is to eliminate the barrier completely for those who need it the most. But again, our goal is to eliminate that barrier for all, and then to begin working on pre-K, as is in our Student Opportunity Act goals.
Okay. Just also, I think it was Jeff mentioned the health insurance. That was recently, that was a success of, I believe it was last year, where you switched providers, and that was allowed for some cost savings. Is that carrying forward? Like, do you see that trend carrying forward as it's continuing to be a savings? It's not all of a sudden like, oh, now it's the percentage has changed, and it's
changed.
no longer saving us any money.
It's changed.
It's changed.
Yeah, yeah.
Could I
It was a one-year blip because we changed companies.
Okay, so,
Well-
but meaning that the savings, of course, but I guess that's.
It's still a win.
It's still a win, but has that cost increased, or, like, I just think of, like, health insurance increase, like, every year, right? So is this still saving us money than if we had
Mr.
stuck with the original?
Mr. Freeman, just to clarify, are you speaking about the PFA model or about the insurance carrier?
The insurance carrier.
Okay, yeah, so the insurance carrier, we switched. There was a one-time savings. We also built a cap into that, which I think is going to help us out this year as we're reviewing those numbers. Those numbers are going through the roof everywhere across the state. You're seeing those news. I will just say, even though you didn't ask, the PFA model continues to be something that really saves us a lot, because we're able to get a much better deal across. So what we're actually passing on to our users is contained, and there are some ability in there to help control and limit those costs. So even when the costs go up through the negotiations, we will be discussing possibly ways to mitigate that and keep it at a reasonable number. And that's the next step in that process. Is the town is going to bring those figures to all the different units in town. But that PFA model also helps to mitigate the cost of the increases.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
My turn? All right. I'll start with one so I don't steal all of Scott's thunder down here. No, I can't. It'll be too long. I'll need water. I guess I want to talk a little bit about the value of the addition. So what I really appreciate about the recommendation here, and I really didn't appreciate it up until a couple of years ago, was when we talk about how to provide level services for students and the types of positions that we're looking to restore, they're all basically preventative in nature, right? Our goal, right? So when the first year on school committee, we were at 27% special education of our budget. Last year was 24%. This year, I was very pleased to see it's 23%. And every single one of those positions helped drive that number down, because we identified these students earlier in their career. We're allowed to put the multi-tiered supports in place for them, and then ideally steer them away from an outplacement, where an outplacement on average is roughly $65,000 on average. I know it varies depending on where they go. So I view that as a huge cost mitigation, and I'm really pleased with what we're doing here, because really we should be trying to drive that number down to 20%, right? If we get that, that's where when we start seeing that alligator chart that we've seen at every municipal meeting and everywhere, right? The special education costs are what's driving, that's the biggest driver in that gap year over year. So we went from 27, 24, 23, and I would like to think that these positions that we're adding, we're identifying these students earlier in their career, right? Having the kindergarten paras in there, right? Having the academic interventionist at every school is gonna help identify those students and put the proper plans in place early to help drive that number down. I know we've been talking about this for well over many years now, I think, and I think we're starting to see the results of that
Yep.
reflected in the budget. So I very much appreciate that.
Great, yeah.
Can I jump in with you, Tim? Just, I'm sorry to jump in just because rather than repeating later on, you're talking about the revenue, the total revenue. But just, if you offset that though, we're actually the highest number of out-of-district placements.
Yes.
And we're also the third highest since 2008 of the percentage of students on IEPs. So what you're speaking to is like, we're looking at the overall number, the dollar amount, but sometimes that means you have more teachers here in order to educate them within the system so that it stops an out-of-district
It's
placement.
far less expensive to
Because
do here.
the bottom line is the bottom line at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, like the dollar spent is the dollar spent, and if we need more people here to stop, to control the cost, the bottom line is the bottom line. If the percentage is going down, but students are getting the needs that they have, and more students are on IEPs than they were before, it's good. It means that we're doing what we can.
Correct.
We're trying to identify issues earlier, and so.
We're the highest in the state?
No, if you look at since 2008.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
the highest
we've
number of
been.
out of
Okay,
districts.
all right, okay.
We're comparing them against ourselves.
Okay.
It's the third highest percentage we've had since 2008 of students on IEPs, so.
Yeah, and it's significantly cheaper to handle it in-house, right? And in a small district, like, we have fewer options, right? So we don't have the resources that a larger city would have with more special education services in-house. So the better we can do earlier on and identify that, that's where we can start. And we're starting to see over the last couple of years, we're starting to see that come back down again. And if we don't invest in that, it's gonna go back up, and that's where we're gonna start seeing unnecessary cost.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, all accurate.
That was my one topic. You wanna take one?
No, you're, go ahead.
The second one was budget offsets. I was glad to see Mr. Connolly put that in the charts. One thing that I would ask, and I know I brought it up a couple weeks ago at our goals meeting, and we certainly don't need to take action on it now, but I would love to understand if there's, from a sense of fiscal responsibility and cost sharing with the community, do we want to start looking at, is there a percentage of the budget offset that we think each category should be? And then tie our user fees to that percentage, rather than hit parents with, like, I think last year we were all loathed with the increases that we needed to make. And I would rather see, hey, the bus company goes up 5%, we're sharing in that cost, we understand it went up. We can't control those costs, but I would rather see that kind of put out there, and we can certainly discuss it at a future meeting when we talk about user fees. But my preferred solution would be, yeah, it might go up $2 here or $3, you know, maybe not that low of an increment, but a smaller increment, rather than hit families. I mean, we hit them with
Yeah.
unprecedented increases last year.
So you're saying be more targeted with a,
But also very transparent, right? Buses went up, we can only subsidize it to this level, that's fiscal responsibility. If we do more than that, that drives future problems in planning our budget, and that's when teachers and supplies and computers can't be ordered because we're spending it where we shouldn't be.
and this isn't, this certainly is not a short-term thing. It'd be interesting to see how we compare these offset percentages with other towns.
It's in the book, it's,
Yeah, I know.
and every town varies.
I know.
Yeah,
But to see where their trends are versus
Right.
our trends.
right.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I would like to consider it, so if you could make a recommendation on what those would be, and then we could evaluate it as part of the user fees, and maybe they don't change this year, or maybe they even go down in some cases, depending on the nature, but to me, that seems like a very fair way to establish user fees.
Okay, yep.
I'll-
Previously, I think Scott asked that a few years ago, we
Yeah,
did some analysis on that.
Yeah, we'll do a tag team on some of these things. I mean, the only thing to add to this is, like, it does look like all of the carryovers are still lower. We've still expended more, and it just, I mean, it concerns me the amount that we're putting in the offset. It's probably not enough, because we're still eating
Correct.
into the budget. So
Yep.
we're building a budget with an offset that's probably not enough to what it really needs to be. So it's artificially
That's
making
correct.
it
Yeah.
look lower than it is, because we're continuing to use our carryover.
Correct.
year to year, and then.
Yeah, in most cases we are.
And I know what Tim's probably looking at with some of the performing art ones are very high, a higher percentage. It's a little different with the performing arts, just because like, if you have a ton of students doing the same musical, like, it's great, we have such good
Yeah.
participation.
I don't care if they're
So
all
we end up
different.
with riffing,
No,
yeah,
if they're all
correct.
different, because, yeah, absolutely, we have to pay for transportation for sports, or
Right.
we have many more coaches. No, I'm not suggesting we have
Right.
one percentage, because I think that would be inequitable across the board.
Right.
But I do think if we said, hey, busing, we should be spending, pick a number, whatever, I don't forget what's in here, 38%, whatever the number is, then that way, if the bus contract goes up, that the fees are associated with it, and we're not arbitrarily
Right.
increasing them. Because what we tend to do is we increase them after we found a problem, right? So then we have to overreact.
Right, but the other thing I would say is, like, I think one of our main concerns when we did the user fee increase was, will it decrease participation? And I like some of the things that were added this year, Michael, into the, Mr. Connolly, into the budget book, where, like, for example, 302 students played a fall sport. That's 47% of students played a fall sport. That's gotta be a really high percentage compared to other districts. That doesn't take into account performing arts. It doesn't take into account, other seasons, but like, if we're still getting nearly 50% of the students play, I mean, with performing arts, it has to be 60% of the student base that is doing something. If you look at activities as well, even higher, but like, so that's the other thing that I was looking at too, is making sure that when we increase user fees, it doesn't mean that people aren't participating.
One more. All right, last one, and then I can hand off the baton. So I guess the other thing to address, right, we're going into a very difficult budget season, right? Jeff and I have been participating in the total municipal planning, right? There's a fairly substantial deficit on the municipal side, much like what we saw a couple of years ago. And at the select board meeting last week, right, as we look to reconcile this budget with the municipal side of the government, a couple things came up that we want to make sure that we address, right? So, and Jeff hit one of them, right, on enrollment, right? The notion was made at select board that enrollment was going down, right? In fact, we've gone up 1% over the last 5 years and going up even beyond that. And I'm not sure, did you consider the 20 Elm project in the future enrollment, or?
We tried to, but maybe not.
Right, so I know it's
didn't
a very
capture all of
inaccurate
it. Yeah,
science.
it was hard. I don't know if I had all the data to get it in there at the time.
Okay, so just, the notion that the schools are losing students at this time is just, that's not true. We are seeing roughly level right now with an uptick going up into the future. So we need to make sure that our staffing is appropriate to that student enrollment.
Could I just add one
Absolutely.
piece, just on enrollment too? Whenever there's enrollment focused in a grade level, we do make those cuts. We will move a teacher or eliminate a position. You have to remember, that it's only been a handful of students the last few years, and those are spread out over 13 grades. So you can't, if there's like one kid in third, one kid in fourth, there's no way to just eliminate a classroom. It's not as simple as that, and that needs to be kept in mind too.
I will just piggyback on that. This isn't like an elastic where you can just stretch it here and push it back there. What I mean by that is, with education being different than many other fields, as we know, it's not like you can remove someone and then just put them back and say, well, I'm just going to cut for a year and then sort of do just-in-time staffing, and then say, okay, we're projecting out in 5 years, we'll cut now, we'll put it back in 3 years. There's a net loss to that is, first off, to students that are already there, but secondly, it's not as easy just to replace someone. It's not as easy just to put a piece back in place as it might be for some other industries. Doesn't mean other industries are lesser than, it just means this is different. It's a substantively different type of position. So even if we saw a blip with a grade, we could make an adjustment, but we have to think carefully about it, because it's not like you say, okay, well, the next year we'll just rehire somebody. It doesn't work quite like that.
Yep.
Anyway, go on, sorry.
Oh, great. And then, the other thing that I spent quite a few minutes on, right, so administration costs, I did want to address that. I did a thorough review of the administration costs, both for our peer districts, but across the state. Right, our administration costs are among the lowest of our peer districts. So again, compliments to you, Dr. Daly, and your entire team. But 2.9%, we're the second lowest of our peer districts, and we're lower than 95% of all other districts. So the notion that our administration costs are increasing or that we're adding staff in administration, I just want to make sure as we discuss the budget as a community, we understand that. I think the school committee, the school department has done a very good job of right-sizing the budget. We are where we are. We took some very drastic cuts over the last 2 years, and they were very painful cuts. We've done made a lot of progress this year to try to figure out how to fit within this new world that we live in, live within the means that we have. So just thank you to both of you for going through. I tried to find problems, Michael, and I couldn't, so great job. I wish you could do my budgets at work too. But this is really well done, and when I look at it and look at how we can shape this and share in this with the community, I think we've come a long way, and I look forward to figuring out, in the joint planning with Select Board, where can we find other costs that maybe we can share with the community that can help offset some of the problems that we're seeing on the municipal side. My diatribe is now complete. It's over to Scott.
Okay, thank you, and you took half mine, which
All
is
right.
good, so, let me just start with a general comment. Honestly, this is the best budget we've started with in a long time. And it shouldn't be overlooked that this is a good revenue year. It really is. Like, we don't usually have this revenue increase at this point in time. Like, if we're asking for 3.6% and we're 120,000 short, we probably got 3.5% of the revenue already. So that's a really good year to begin with. But a couple things go into that. Number one, there are some, our requests are lower because of the circuit breaker. The bus contract is, lower than normal, shifting the wastewater. So there's a few advantages that we have that we're not going to have every year. But it's a good budget year to begin with. But as a lot of people have said, the reason it's okay is because we've made cuts. And so, I think I said 26 because I can't read my own writing. I think it was 20, but like, whatever. I mean, we've made a
20.
lot of cuts over the last, was that?
It's 18 and 7.2. So.
Yes, and, but again, I think there's also some that we've cut, and then we've had to add back teachers for, special education teachers, things like that, or paras, so like, the number's fluid a little bit, but it's a good start. But it's all because we've made cuts. And so we've had to make cuts over the last 3 years. We've made cuts each of the last 3 years, which is the only reason why we're here. And so I understand there's going to be an argument out there like, oh, the schools are not in as bad of a position as the town is. Well, that's because we've done our job the last 2 or 3 years. We've made the cuts we needed to. And so that's just the reality of where we're at. We either, and I'm glad to see that we're restoring budgets or restoring some positions or trying to. One negative thing and then a couple of suggestions and questions and thoughts. But the negative thing to bring up is capital improvement, CIPC. We don't know what we're getting from there yet. But I'll tell you right now, I know before the last snowstorm, we were 700,000 over for snow and ice removal already. And that directly goes into free cash. Free cash is what helps fix the budget sometimes, and it helps fund capital projects. So for our group, I'll tell you some of the requests we're not gonna get. I don't think there's any way we're getting the equipment for the TV studio. So that is one thing that I think we have to think about putting in. If it's impacting classes and we have a video studio that we don't have equipment to use, I think we need to think about putting that in the budget for this year. I don't know if the multifunction van will be on there or not. There's more discussions about that. But I think it's not gonna be as good of a capital year as we've had in the last couple of years. There are also a couple of big projects like maybe getting, waste bins or whatever, if we're gonna go to, the trash contract's gonna change, and that's gonna eat up a lot of the revenue that we have. So I think the capital revenue is probably gonna be lower than in years past. And so a couple of our projects, if we want to do them, and I think the TV studio in
Yeah, the
particular.
track resurfacing won't get funded either.
Right.
I don't believe, yeah.
Right, but again, that shouldn't come off of us, like, we don't even
Right.
own the track.
Right.
But like, I think things that we need, like the TV studio, I think needs to be in here. And then just looking at things that need to be in here, I think this is a year we should reduce kindergarten. I do. I mean, I think, I don't know how we do it, but like, it's a year where I would love to add back things, but if we're ever gonna do it, this is a year we need to think about trying to reduce it a little bit, maybe not eliminate it all. But I think that's something we should be arguing for, and I think we should probably be having the budget, like, that we should at least be reducing it by $500 or $1,000 and show that that's the gap that we really have, because we should be eliminating the fee for full-day kindergarten in the next 2 or 3 years. And so I think that should be in there. I think that, the other thing I had, one thing to just point out is our average spending on per student is still below the state average. Those are older numbers in the book. It's like,
Yeah, they don't,
Crazy.
they run like a
Behind.
year and a half, 2 behind.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Yeah, I mean, those are the biggest comments. I mean, I think Tim and other people hit on most of them, but I think just like a couple of adjustments in there where like, I think full-day kindergarten, we need to, if we're ever gonna do it, this is the year we have to do something with it. And, yeah, just a couple of capital projects I
Yep.
think
Okay.
probably
Make a note.
need to be looked at if we're going to do it. The two projects that I think we need, I think the school van, the multifunction van, if that doesn't get funded, because the performing arts are offering to pay for a third of the cost of it. I'm hoping we can push the CIPC to fund that anyways, but if not, I think we should think about that, and.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are my thoughts just on like what we're doing, but great job overall. Yeah, I mean, it's a good year for revenue, and it's still always gonna be tight, but, it's a good year because we've made cuts.
So, just so people understand, this is preliminary budget, not final budget. So when we're talking about this, if like, here's some suggestions, I mean, that's one of the things that got talked about is we're gonna have a
Right.
budget workshop. We're still working through some of this. So what you saw in here for restoration are suggestions and comments based on feedback from the schools throughout the district and from what we know. But as was talked about, it's not necessarily final, so we're still gonna go through this. Were you done with?
Yep, I
some of
think
it?
those are my comments.
Just another couple of things. One slide that I think stands out, and we keep talking about, it's a 3.6% increase this year. You know, if you actually look at that and you remove the couple COVID years, it even looks, what we're doing this year is even better than that, because COVID years didn't have to worry about transportation, you didn't have to worry about school lunches, you didn't really have to worry about a lot of snow removal either when no students were actually here. So when you actually take into account a number of pieces here, and no, I know that that's, snow removal is a different part of the budget, but still, my point here is the 3.6 looks even better across the 10-year average if those 2 years were actually normal years. So this is bringing us back down to increases that are much more akin to about 10 years ago. So it's pretty remarkable what we're looking at here. The final thing I'll say, and this is just, you know, again, I'm echoing things I've said many, many times in the past. When you compare the budget detail that we have here, and you actually compare against other districts, and you compare against our planning against other districts, you will see a vast difference in the level of detail and the planning we're doing. We are not done. We are definitely not done. There's much more discussion to be had, but we're starting from a point of transparency and knowledge that you are not going to see in just about any other district. That is entirely due to the hard work of the people you see here, as well as others in the background that are working on all this. So as we all have questions and comments, you know, it's based on the fact that we have so much knowledge. Can you imagine the questions and comments we would have if this was much more murky or just completely, completely nonsensical like you will see in other areas? So anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying thank you. The hard work is very much appreciated, noticed and appreciated, and so it's making our decision-making process a lot easier. Yeah, Scott?
Just one thing I forgot I was gonna say. If people are looking and saying, oh, they're trying to restore 10 positions, we're putting 10 positions in. I just wanna point out that about half of those positions are the lowest salary positions we can get. You know, I mean, it's a combined $112,000 for 3 paraprofessionals. So that's less than $40,000 a year for, including benefits for those people. So, you know, $37,000, and that includes their benefits. The tutors are about, it looks like it's about $42,000, including benefits. So these are the ones that are directly working with students, directly trying to, assess needs early on. So about half of the positions are some of the lowest salary positions that we have. So it's not like we're trying to put in $1 million in 10 positions. Like, it's really things that are just we can get the most bang for the buck, I guess, where like we can add a few more people in the classrooms to try to assess and just split things up a little bit. But the dollars associated with some of those ads or ad backs are very, very low.
Great.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So just to build on what you're saying, to thank, this process all starts with Michael Connolly, back early in the fall. We start talking about this, what it looks like. We work so collaboratively with the town, meeting essentially every other week, all year long, trying to work on this, and we're going to continue to work on this and reconcile. I think a couple of things I just wanted to make sure everyone's clear on. We talk a lot about the big cuts the last 2 years after the failed override, but I think it's also important to note that almost every year, Michael and I have been doing this for 15 years or so, there's often a $500,000, $600,000 deficit that we're reconciling through not filling vacant positions, being creative, thinking outside the box, trying to bring it under balance. And a lot of that goes under the radar because we all huddle up, town and schools together, and figure out a way to make it work. When we approached, 2 or 3 years ago, we identified that there would be some issues down the road. Schools had it the first couple of years, towns have it more now. And that's the story that we laid out, and that is the true story of a revenue issue that we still haven't solved. But I want to thank also all of our administrators. The way this process works, and really we have our strategic vision started back 15 years ago. The first real test of that vision was when the high school brought forward, they wanted to introduce Mandarin. And we had to say, hold on, that's not in our strategic plan. So we went back and added it the next summer, but that was the first real test of is our vision going to be what we follow? And so that was back in 2011. We then had 16, 25, and now we're working on NRHS 2030. All of the positions are in there. When we make some cuts, sometimes we try to add some new things to move forward, and we try to restore. So working with all of our administrators and our principals to talk about what are those things that are most essential, where are we feeling it the most, and as Mr. Sutherland pointed out, these are all preventative pieces. Every single one of them on there, we see it as a cost savings down the road or it's preventative. We have a vision for full-time interventionists, but we're adding just the part-time back. We're trying to restore. But our principals helped us create that priority order restoration and to come up with these most essential positions, and that's what you see reflected here. So some elements of our vision moving forward and some restoration, but we can't just say we eliminated French and we're just going to add it back next year. That's a multiple year. Once you take it away, it's going to take multiple years to build that back, and we're going to think about it. And I hope we're here in a few years talking about Mandarin, other languages, rebuilding a world language program, but that's not going to happen overnight. But these are the first steps to get us back on our feet. So thank you for hearing us tonight.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Great. No, thank you. Anybody else? Anyone? Okay, well, more to come in future meetings. Look, this is always a long but in detailed process. Yep. Yep, please. Oh, sorry.
Question or more of
Get us.
observation?
Yeah.
Something that kept rolling through my mind as I was looking at the different percentages is I was thinking about graduation rates, and I was thinking about how much of this budget was devoted per student, and thinking about how that is and how it's changed over time. And it would look a little different than this chart because of the things that have been discussed, like gas prices, the different money that's going to other things that are not direct cost to students. So I just thought it might tell more of the story in an engaging way of, I know some people just back off from budgets completely, so I wondered if that might be a way to bring it to life.
Yeah, at one point in time, I think we did more of an analysis of direct cost to student. I could have a false memory on that, but I believe that is something we were looking at.
It's in there.
I'll say typically that's in Michael's presentation.
Yeah.
We're slightly below, if you can speak
Yeah,
to
we're
the
below
number.
the state average when we look at our pure pupil
Keep
spending.
in mind, that presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's probably a
glad you
there's
printed
probably a
it now.
backup slide somewhere. Right on there.
Yeah. Oh, whatever.
So there's
that is-
a
that's
there's a
on the
slide that
rainforest
shows the
here,
per
so-
pupils, the comparative districts and everything. So maybe that's a one pager to get out there to Ms. Elkin's point.
Yeah, one of the sections.
Social media people,
One of the sections in the book
get that
Is a,
slide out
um,
there on social.
Yeah.
It's a good.
is a performance trend section where you just spoke of graduation rates, teacher ratios, per pupil spending, at a school level, as a district level, all fund level. There's some good analysis in there, and it kind of just, there's positive things and there's negative things. So it's like kind of all there, and it's all, so there's a good section. It's section 6 in that book.
When we're thanking him for doing the budget, it's partly for these slides. It's really, it's this sucker right here. Like whatever about the principal.
All the tabs, look at all
Whatevs. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, with that, hooray for round 1 of these budgets. We go into routine matters, because that was just a presentation, there's no voting on it. So why don't we do the minutes from February 23rd, 2026?
Scrolling, here we go. Move to approve the meeting minutes from February 23, 2026, open session as written.
Second. We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved, 5-0. That was the only minutes. So we've got, we should go through the budget update.
You again, Michael.
Okay, so the current fiscal year, 2026 budget update, that was in your packet.
Just for everybody listening, yes, I was kidding when I said that, because we just did a budget. That's next year's budget. This is an update on this year's budget, so.
Right. So this report reflects activity through the end of February. Again, not a lot of new information from previous monthly reports. We certainly can see some of the balances on the expense side, special education tuition. We've talked about that. We take measures at the end of each fiscal year when there's funding available to legally prepay some of those tuitions. So we do that to help us address unanticipated costs and sort of the unforeseen. So we took those measures again at the end of fiscal year 2025. That's helped us have that level of flexibility and to address some of that rising trend in costs and unforeseen. So that's why this amount is there. I talked last presentation about the challenging winter and the increased sort of overtime costs and maintenance costs and so forth that we saw for just snow removal and snow and ice. Just heating, we've seen a higher degree of heating degree days this year in a very, very cold winter, so we'd see some of those gas utility rates are up and expenses are up, but at the moment we've been able to kind of manage this and all within budget. But it certainly has not come without some challenges and some allocation to really look at it. On the payroll side, really everything is sort of moving forward within budget. We've been able to fill positions when there's been absences. We've been able to address long-term substitute needs, and our daily substitute budget's going to be projected to be within balance right now. We see some of those costs really go up though the final quarter of the fiscal year, so we'll continue to monitor those. But right now, everything's kind of within projection and budget. Food service program is performing well. We're trying to invest certainly back into that program, update equipment, continue to do that. And at this moment, as we approach really the final quarter of the fiscal year, believe it or not, we're getting into mid-March, so we're getting close to April, May, and June, the final quarter. We need to certainly stay on top of some of the unforeseen, stay on top of where we're at, but we are in a good position to move into that fourth quarter, close the fiscal year. But certainly there will always be things that come up over the last 4 months. With that being said, any questions on that? I know there was one supplemental report.
I have one question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
Just on free lunches, I know at one point there was discussion about whether it would be continued for the rest of the year at the state, and I don't know if there's any thought on that, or next year, if it will continue to be funded in the budget?
So, for the moment, it's gonna be supported through the end of the school year, through the state. Next year, it's a little up in the air. I know that the governor's supporting it. But, there's certainly been talk about either doing it for half the year or all the year, but at the moment, it's continuing to be supported. So we have to just really pay close attention to any changes there, because if that were to change, it would definitely impact participation and revenue into the program. There was a student activity report as a supplemental budget update. This reflects activity through the end of Q2, which is December of 2025. You can see the certified bank balances for each student activity account. Some of the sub-account balances are there as well for high school and middle school. This is part of our policy to provide quarterly updates. I don't know if there's any questions on any particular account.
Class of 2027 needs to step it up. No, this is fine, thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. Why don't we get into staffing?
Just a very quick update here. Miss Blaine Wiley, it's actually, I believe, with an E, is stepping in as a long-term substitute for a general education position at the Hood School.
Excellent.
We have right now.
Okay, bids and donations.
All right. I move that that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude a donation of $1,107.50 from the E. Ethel Little PTO to be used towards the transportation and entrance fee for the grade 4 field trip to the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved 5-0.
I move that the school committee vote to accept with gratitude a donation of $682.50 from the E. Ethel Little PTO to be used towards transportation for the grade 5 field trip to the Museum of Fine Arts.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved 5-0. Grants, we actually have a grant this time, the 2026 Cybersecurity Awareness Program.
So as Mr. Segroy spoke to, we are once again going to participate in the Cybersecurity Awareness Program next year. This is just the acceptance letter from the governor and from the secretary, Jason Snyder. There's not necessarily a monetary value associated with this, but we are able to opt into the program, the Know Before software, all of that is a part of this grant program. We have a comprehensive system of training modules for staff and then also phishing campaigns throughout the year. So every so often I will get a staff member who will frantically say, hey, I just got that. And I said, nope, that's exactly right. You've identified, right? But we also get reports on the back end of who's clicking, what's happening, and they get reassigned. So it's a great system.
We do them, all of us.
You probably, everyone's doing them, yeah. I do them for every university that I'm associated with too, so I get it. But this program allows us to implement this program for free, which has been great.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Again, people out there who don't understand what we're talking about, these are small, seemingly small things that keep our kids and our staff and our school system safe from from cyber threats, from threats that are maybe non-physical, but still pretty harmful.
And a huge financial,
Oh, massive
If that were
financial
to happen.
consequence, potential consequence.
so the grant's really invaluable,
Yeah.
honestly, to have.
Right. It doesn't look like there are any overnight trips at this time.
Do you want a motion to accept the grant?
Oh, well, it's already been signed.
You can do you can do the motion to accept the grant if you'd like to.
Do we need to approve something that's already been signed and countersigned? I guess we do. Okay. Yeah, can I get a motion to accept the grant?
So moved?
Fair enough.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor say, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against say nay. Approved 5-0. Awesome. It's a little odd approving something that's been both signed and countersigned, but for it. Okay, overnight trip requests. Doesn't look like there are any at this time. I'm sure that social media has a plethora of things based on these discussions, so I'm sure.
If I could, while we were here, I did get an update about an overnight trip request. I could
okay.
put it off till the next meeting, or I could give a brief update. I don't have all of the details, but I have general details. I don't know. Want to do a preview of it and see if there's enough information to vote, or do you want to wait?
I would say if we're gonna have to vote on it again next time when we have numbers and.
We'll just
Yeah, why don't we just do it
Okay.
next time?
Yep.
Assuming it can be done next time.
Yeah.
Is
When
there
It's
a-
over April vacation, so I'm just trying to think, we're getting close.
what is it?
If we could have a preliminary discussion, that would be great if we could.
Yeah.
So the baseball trip that we've spoken about, they're going to Sandwich at Mass Maritime, but they're looking to extend it to an overnight trip while they're down the Cape. So it's over April break. So we usually approve this every year. But
Any sense of numbers or anything?
I don't, those are the details I have now. I can get the numbers, but if it's sort of, if we can say to approve it,
But is it
that they
paid
can
for
begin
by
to
the-
plan.
Is it paid for by the school, like the baseball team, or
It's usually through the baseball team, yeah.
what? We don't. By the teams.
So we're not footing the bill anyway.
I move to approve the baseball trip
fine.
over April vacation.
Yeah, it's fine.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved 5-0.
Thank you, that's great.
Okay. Do you guys want to talk about social media? I mean, like I said, I think there are a whole bunch of things that can be listed out.
Well, thank you for the one pager, Dr. Daly, because that one's already posted.
Great.
Woohoo.
Mr. Zagroy, yeah.
So I think if we can get those, that just helps.
Yep.
We can get them ready to go before the meeting. Are there any highlights from the budget presentation that we want to make sure we hit? Preliminary.
I think probably a few of those slides, I think what Ms. Elkins recommended, maybe we could do showing this per pupil costs.
I think the only question I would have about putting too much out for numbers is if we're gonna change anything. If we're gonna look at things that might not be approved by capital, if we're gonna look at full-day kindergarten or anything like that, I'd be hesitant to get a budget out on social media, cause, you know, we have 3 people here tonight, that, I mean, I don't think social media might get a couple more eyes on it. So if we're gonna make any revisions to the overall, I might suggest we not put too much out yet if the numbers are gonna change.
I don't think, well, we're not gonna make any revisions to the staffing recommendations, right? I think that's something a lot of people would be interested in.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're thinking restoring,
Yeah,
I wouldn't entirely make that assumption.
okay.
I think that's part of what we want to talk about. I think that's part of what Scott was recommending.
I think you could put it in, like, right now, we're already short 120.
Yeah,
I'm thinking maybe we increase the deficit with things that we need this year,
Yeah,
and then
yep.
we talk about what's gonna not make it, because right now, all of it can't make it unless revenue goes up anyways.
yeah,
We're gonna have to make cuts, and so if we're saying that, like, we need the video equipment for the video production class to actually work, you know, I think that's something that's an immediate need that we have to look at. If we have to, I don't know where kindergarten sits, honestly, like, and I don't know if we should not do it, but I think in years past, we've at least put on there, because it's still in our goals to try to eliminate it, so I think we should at least have it in there, even if it ends up being a cut that we make, and so I would think that maybe the deficit goes up a little bit, and we say, here are the things we actually also need in there,
Yeah.
and then we have to decide on what's actually being cut or not cut, so.
I mean, I think the point of the social media in the first place, right, was to let people know ahead of time. So I feel like as long as we put this as preliminary and there could be changes, you know, because it's as if, it's the same thing as if people were actually here or people were watching online.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I think more transparency is better than less.
Yeah,
more
and
info, the
just
better,
getting it
especially
out
around budget.
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm mostly concerned about putting out like, oh, we're only $120,000 short, because I don't know that I agree.
No, I wouldn't start there.
I don't
Right.
think he would frame it that way.
Right. Good, again, I wouldn't show that slide, like, because in the past, we've shown that slide, if they were 1.2 million short.
For a
you know,
different
I wouldn't
purpose.
show
Yes.
that this
Yeah.
year, because, yeah,
Because we're not.
right.
Yes,
So,
I get that. All right, well, it sounds like we've got something for digital learning and something to consider, at least for budgetary purposes. I think that's fine. We don't have to make that decision.
Oh, no shortage of fodder for budget, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
300 and some odd pages.
Well, you gotta put this to good use.
We'll be posting about the hearing too, so that maybe just starting to
We can
advertise
share
that.
yeah.
Just
So
to
the
save date.
hearing, although we don't explicitly call it out, although I don't think we have a restriction, I would like to actually make that a Facebook event, so it shows up on calendars, which I think we don't really contemplate in the policy, but I can't imagine that's basically, it'd be the same as the posting for the meeting, but it would put it on people's Facebook
Yeah.
calendar.
Yeah,
Any objection?
No, it sounds good.
Is that the 13th, I believe, Mike?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we get into additional information, the subcommittee updates. I'll give a quick update on financial planning team. It's got referenced a number of times in the discussion tonight. We're really getting into some of the nitty-gritty of municipal budget as well as school budgets and where both sides sit, and you know, it's a very collaborative discussion, I would say, in terms of trying to approach the problem or problems. And you know, that's what's progressing these discussions, and that's what leads us to this this presentation tonight. We're not doing anything, we're not going rogue and saying, this is what we're doing, and no one else, I don't care about anybody else. We're doing this all in collaboration with the larger team. So there are no surprises anywhere here. You know, I'm not gonna get into some of the details of things that we're discussing out of respect for the fact that it's an ongoing process, and it's just still in motion. Anything you guys wanna add to?
When, more of a question, well, we'll get to CIPC. Do you know when you guys are gonna rank and vote for CIPC?
Well, I can give a full update when you're on.
Okay, we'll wait a little bit, right, well, I think that's a good summary, Jeff.
No, that's fine. Yeah, do you wanna talk?
I'll talk capital and fire station if anyone's interested too, but, capital improvement, we've done the rankings, but the problem in doing the rankings is some of the projects weren't clear. We had to get more information, and I'll say I was frustrated, and I brought it up in the meeting, cause I'm pretty honest about that, about how things kept changing. Like, for example, we need bathrooms at the fire station. We have a female firefighter now. We don't have a proper space for her to, use the facilities. And so that project is changing now, and what was put in there was not what they actually need. So we have to go back and get more, what the funding is. There was a discussion about having air conditioning at the gym, town hall. Well, the problem is, if you put it in, the town hall has 400 amp and they're already maxed out. So actually, they would need to do an electrical project and then do that as a next step. But then the other question is, if they're gonna be leasing a senior space, maybe they don't need to do that project at all. So I'll be honest, I think while we were trying to move forward to the completion of it, I think we've actually taken a step back to try to reevaluate what is actually being requested and what's need. I guess one of the cars that we were putting on there that was a high priority crashed and got totaled, so insurance is paying for that, so that's coming off. So
I'm not trying to blame anybody for
there's
that.
been a lot of changes for in there. But I think the overall thing is, I think we still don't know the number we have to use, and I think what was brought up in the last meeting was just snow and ice is really gonna impact the amount that we have.
Agreed.
Like in the past, there's been around 2 to 2.2 million, and it just seems like it's probably gonna be less than that this year, and that's gonna be an issue.
That's odds that we done it, so. I
Right.
think we have 2 items for the school that I'm confident will be funded, even, the committee has a March 11th to make changes to it. Revisions in their rankings before we relook at it and reallocate it. We haven't driven that line, but I think it's gonna be much less than what's been in the past. The multifunction, certainly the TV studio, track are all kinda, looking like it could fall below the line. The multifunction's got a chance, but
Yeah.
it could fit nicely into like a raise and appropriate amount at the end, and we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Right. And then,
And obviously, that could potentially have impact to our budget, and I get that.
yeah. And then fire station, just in case people are curious, I mean, that's a public meeting, so like, I think it gets posted, so I don't think I'm saying anything out of sorts, but they've tried to narrow down a site. They still don't know if it's gonna be a second station or the headquarters, but we were doing site fits on different properties, but it's really down to a portion of the Stop and Shop property, kinda right across from the church, that the potential buyer is willing to potentially
Yeah,
sell a portion of that.
Yep.
And so they were doing site fits on that property and looking at how that would work, and so,
I heard
yeah.
that.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's, again, an ongoing process as well, so.
Okay. When was that meeting last, the fire station? When was it?
Thursday morning, right?
CIPC.
That was the 5th. When was, fire station?
I don't know, I had 2 fire station meetings last week.
fair enough.
I had one on the 5th. I think I had one on the 5th and one on
Monday or Tuesday that week. One on the third.
Okay.
One on the third, one on the fifth.
Okay.
Becoming an expert on fire stations now. Actually, I'm not.
As-
I'm asking a lot of dumb questions, so, as I tend to do.
Every little kid's dream. Okay. All right, for future subcommittee schedules, the finance planning team is planning on meeting again March 19th at 8 a.m. Athletic subcommittee, March 10th, so this week tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. And fine arts subcommittee, April 14th at 10:15 p.m. Administrative report, Dr. Daly.
I do have one. Just to share the principal search update, we have the position posted for the middle school principal. We're currently accepting applications through March 20th. We have about 15 applications that we're reviewing. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have forums to collect input from all stakeholders and about information they'd like to see in the next principal. So those announcements went out with the dates. We are collecting information about forming our interview committee, conducting interviews, and then taking next steps with our finalists according to the plan I shared last time. So some good candidates coming in that we're excited to begin that process.
Nice.
Just wanted to share out and have a brief discussion. There some pre-K-12 action team events. Some of the folks are here. But we're very excited so Family University is going to present a series of events. One is a community-wide book read called The Amazing Generation. It's based upon, it's the sort of the teen version. It's a YA graphic novel based on the anxious generation, but it reframes it in kid-friendly language, and it reframes it in a real positive. It's not talking about being anxious. It's talking about how can we be amazing, and then we know the results and the research which support lessening anxiety. So we're launching that at Screenagers, which is a related topic about anxiety growing up in the digital age. So we're in this room on the 24th. We're going to have a screening of the film, which is supported by the Community Impact Team Youth Substance Abuse Coalition, who's also co-sponsoring the book read along with the Flint Memorial Library. And we are launching the book read that evening. We're going to have some copies available. The library is going to be here with some books and also information about, I believe they have like a mobile, they can check out books if you come here, which is kind of cool, but also information about how to do that. And then some other related events. We have an anxiety presentation coming up in April, which will be hosted by our school psychologist. Also, our school psychologist is going to facilitate the discussion after our screening of Screenagers. And then we also have our setting up social media safety and boundary presentations. There's one March 12th, and then there's also going to be another one in May. We're going to repeat that as well. I have to get that date in there. So the one point that I wanted to ask, I don't know, just something we talked about in our group, as we're doing a community-wide book read, having some touch points throughout the year. So starting with Screenagers, maybe again, when we host our anxiety presentation here, maybe hosting something at the library. It's just a thought that our group brainstormed. I just wanted to bounce it off the committee about making an agenda item about the community-wide book read. I don't know if folks on the committee are interested in reading the book or whether people might come, students, parents, anyone, to present and just talk about a topic. I don't know whether you think that's inappropriate, but we're always trying to get more people involved and engaged. Might be just an interesting way to do it, but
I think it's a good way to do it. I think let's define it as to what we want to get out of it.
yeah.
And if we can, if we can sharpen it a little bit together or with the action committee,
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
It was just a thought of like maybe, students could come in, present on what their takeaways were, give sort of an update on this, but also engaging people here as just a touch point. We do see this possibly extending into next year too, just getting it started like North Reading Night Out and some other events throughout the year where we have these things. Because the book is very much about putting your device aside and, writing a letter to someone or interviewing someone about what it was like or, all these different opportunities. So it might be interesting to hear from them. So just a thought.
I think it's a great
That's
idea.
interesting.
I think that's good. Anything else?
That is all for this week.
Excellent. All right, so for future business, we've got March 23rd, the middle school presentations. We've got the Northwest Vocational School representatives here, as well as Nolan Pierce, which is great. April 13th, we're going to do the fiscal year 2027 budget public hearing. Keep in mind, we will have workshops earlier in the day that were just talked about. So it's going to be a full day of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes budget discussion, so.
And
awesome.
that's when I think Senator Tarr and Representative Jones have rescheduled too, so a very,
fine.
very full.
No, you know what?
Eat your Wheaties for that
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
True, although I'd say that's kind of fortuitous. Let's go,
yeah,
you know.
it actually works
Yeah.
perfectly.
The only thing to think about with that is the public hearing has to have a time associated with it, doesn't it?
It will, we'll have that on there.
Okay, so we'll just have to make sure that like, Senator Tarr and Representative Jones know the time.
Oh, yeah, because I have them down for, I told them 6:30 that we could do it at the beginning of the meeting again, so if I need to give them a different time, then let me know.
Or we can do the hearing.
We usually do the public hearing around 7, so yeah, if we have to adjust that, we'll think that through. I have to post that very
So we
soon.
brought that to go, remember the
Figure it
first,
out.
so we can hit the time slot.
I just don't know how long we have.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, again, because.
As long as we
yeah,
say.
we went long last year, but I asked a lot of questions, but.
Okay.
I believe that's also our hood school presentation that evening, but maybe not.
It'll be even better in tiny seats.
Yeah, no, I think we're here, actually.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, the fiscal year, and date to be determined for the budget workshop. And if needed, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's needed. Okay, I think that concludes our normal business. If we could get both a motion to adjourn as well as go into executive session, adjourn the public session, go into executive session, that would be awesome.
I move to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and or litigation, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and to not return to open session.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. I believe we've got to do a roll vote for this one. So,
Aye.
Buckley?
Aye.
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 I'm an aye as well, 5-0. Thanks, everybody.